you finished Rhythm of War? Are you rereading anything else before Wind and Truth comes out?
So yeah, I finished because I started with Rhythm of War because I'm a crazy person. And theoretically, I should be moving on to Oathbringer. But Words of Radiance has been downstairs, so I've been just like kind of like reading through Words of Radiance. So I don't know. I like.
Like a
I'll probably
scale?
read
Like
it.
you're going backwards on the scale? Like
Right. I was
Rhythm,
like, you know what? I
Words,
guess so. I guess
Oathbringer,
that's
Way
what
of
it is.
Kings?
So I did Rhythm of War. I think yeah. You know what? I can go. I've Rhythm of War, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, Way of Kings. That's how we're gonna do it.
That,
So
I mean, people talk about like the wrong way to read the Cosmere. That might be
that'd
close.
be the wrong way. I think
But
I
as a
just
reread, it's like
I
it's
think I'm
all
I'm mood reading the Cosmere right now. Like whatever kind of comes to me. Um, I Way of Kings is my least favorite of the Stormlight Archive. It's still great.
yeah.
But it's my least favorite of the four books. It's very, very dark, I think. It's not dark is the wrong word. It's I find the beginning of Way of Kings to be a little bit hard to get through because Kaladin is in such a bad place.
Yes.
And it just feels like there's not a lot of like movement. Um,
Oh yeah.
so I'm like not I think I'm gonna yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, so I'm kind of like breezing through Words of Radiance at the moment.
I love it. If you end up wanting to go really weird on a reread, and anybody who wants to find me on Discord, I'm happy to share this with you as well. V, our friend from Europe, went through and used a program basically to create EPUBs for every single character as a chronological, this is this character's
Oh
story
wow.
through the Stormlight archive. So you could just read Adolin, like every
Oh cool.
Adolin chapter where and she included not just points of view, but like where he's a central character. So you don't miss out on like Adolin in White Spine Uncaged, because that's mostly from Kaladin's perspective and things like that. And it was just a monster of a project, but it's
Wow,
really
that
cool to
does
be
sound
able
cool.
to take one character all the way through.
Yeah, that is super cool. That's really cool. I should check that out also.
Yeah. Jason says, do you think Risen with the Dawn Shard will have a significant influence in Wind and Truth?
Every time I say this, like I can't possibly see how Brandon's gonna fit all of this in. I'm then
And then
proven
and
wrong.
then you saw day two's list of point of
I
view
know.
characters.
I know. And I was like, oh man, I was wrong on that one. So I don't know. I mean, I think so. It seems to be weird that she wouldn't. But also I've been wrong before, so we shall have to see. I mean, it seems
It
weird that it would be set up and then not do anything with that. We know the Dawn Shards are going to be important.
Yeah. I mean, she's been a critical because I'm doing my Stormlight Archive reread in a more traditional format, one might say, with the weirdness of like intersplicing Wind and Truth while reading the earlier books, which is really fun because he loves to seed things and he loves to put the little like, oh hey, da, 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 and then now you're seeing, from the first chapter, Shallan is thinking about a secret 10 heartbeats away and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Or her first flashback, the world ended and Shallan was to blame. And you're just like, what does that mean, Shallan? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Um, but in Way of Kings, you have her in Shinovar, where she like buys the grass and leaves with her Bapsk. And then in Words of Radiance, you have her getting Cheery Cheery. And then you have her eventually becoming a central character to a novella for Dawn Shard. And so, I mean, yes, it could all be seeding for books 6 through 10 or some future event. But it makes a lot more sense that she would do something important by the end of Wind and Truth. But
I mean,
I don't
she's
know.
also there. She's there during the Battle of Thalen Field. She's the
Yeah.
one who tells them where the ruby has gone. Like she's in that bank, I think, when it explodes or something. I have to reread Oathbringer, like I said. But so she's always
That's pretty
like,
spot on. Yeah.
yeah. So she's always like around when important things are happening. It could be that like what he's doing with Risen is just that's who she is. She's just sort of an important person, but she's not directly related to the story. But I mean, giving her a Dawn Shard's kind of a big one. So
Oh, and I don't know if this can't possibly have been intentional. I don't know. So there's a thing in the A Song of Ice and Fire fandom with, Bran becomes crippled, and then he's told one day you'll fly. People like to imagine, he got a saddle for a horse, he'll get a saddle for a dragon, he'll fly into battle. What if that happens with Risen? Risen has become crippled, and now she rides Cheery Cheery, wielding a Dawn Shard, like shooting flaming whatever Dawn Shards do down on the battlefield. I could see that. I could, in an epic, like, you don't have to do a lot. You've set her, because you don't want to have something that happened with Wheel of Time, where all of a sudden in your final climactic battle, people are just showing up out of nowhere that you haven't built up. And so I could see building Risen up with basically a dragon and a magic MacGuffin. Now it makes sense if she shows up out of nowhere. You can be like, okay, we've built this person up. Now we can rely upon them to solve the problems in the fight or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there are some characters who were introduced in interludes that we know are going to, like Lift, for example, introduced in interludes, but then she's very clearly an important central part of the story. I don't know if Risen is going to be that. It seems like she's much more just kind of a very side character that's supposed to represent a different part of the world. Mm-hmm. But who knows? So
yeah, it will. I hope that we continue to see her doing things, and then whether it's in this book or Stormlight 6 or a Cosmere book, right? Like she leaves Roshar and starts doing merchanty things. She's in the Silverlight Mercantile someday, and we're like, wait, that's Risen over there, and she just continues to move around the Cosmere. I could see.
Yeah, that would be cool. On an unrelated note, did you see the video of the girl who went into Barnes & Noble's looking for Mistborn and then saw Brandon?
Yes, that's amazing.
I was like, that is the most amazing thing to happen.
Go buy this author's book. Oh, there they are signing the book that I want to buy.
Exactly. So I just had to mention that. I thought it was such a cool video.
Yeah, that was super cute. I think for both of them to just like...
Wait, what? I mean, I assume that happens to him more often, or at least that people, like, if he goes, because I think he goes into like bookstores all the time to sign books.
Yeah.
So like chances that somebody's gonna recognize him in a bookstore is pretty high.
It's such a, like, it does hurt my brain sometimes to like think about, because one of the things people will say is like, imagine every Brandon Sanderson fan, right? But then remember, like, people that just like movies, right? Like, to compare the amount of Brandon Sanderson fans to like people in the world, it's just like, oh, it's so tiny, but we, huge passion, huge investment, huge everything. But then who knows? I mean, statistically speaking, he might walk through a Barnes and Noble and people are like, oh yeah, there's some dude over there grabbing books off of shelves and signing them. I don't know.
I feel like there are some authors that even if they were really big authors could walk into a bookstore and people wouldn't recognize them. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I think like there are even big authors. I think like if Patrick Rothfuss walked into a bookstore, there would be people who recognized him, but I don't know if it would be like, I think he could get away with it. I don't know if Brandon Sanderson can get away. I think there's enough people. Maybe if he was like in a bookstore, I don't know, somewhere very remote, but
yeah.
Did you see because Jason brought up the book, The Name of the Wind, that he signed, but he also wrote The Name of the Wind is Bob, and I was like, that's incredible.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It would have obviously messed up the Kedek and a bunch of other things, but I still really like Stones Unhallowed for a Stormlight book. That was originally going to be one of the books, and I mean, I'm sure there's lots of reasons that go into this, but I mean, Zeth and Stone and like, Stone has been a big thing. It was too close to Doors of Stone, which is supposed to be the third Patrick Rothfuss book. And at the time when he's writing Way of Kings, he's like, okay, yeah, surely by the time I get to book 3 or 4, that third book will be out. Okay, I can't use that. And then now we're nearly book 5 is out and we don't even have a thought for book 3.
I mean, that's one of the best things about being a Sanderson fan is getting to lord it over Patrick Rothfuss and Martin fans, and so.
Oh man, I love Rothfuss. I love Name of the Wind. I love Wise Man's Fear. I think they both have some of the same pieces of Sanderson that I love about how like you can find the pieces and world build and theorize and theory craft. But then there's just something musical about Pat's writing that I really, really enjoy and appreciate. But then we don't get a book for forever.
I wonder why. Like, it's so interesting to me because, okay, when did Wise Man's Fear, is that what the second book's called?
Mm-hmm.
When did that one come out? I feel like I remember that coming out, but it's probably been about 10 years, right?
Yeah. I think it's got a 10th. One of them has a 10th anniversary edition. So it can't be 10 full years. Let's see. 2011, maybe?
That's when Name of the Wind.
Man's Fear.
Was it 2011?
Let me look. What am I doing here? Looks like 2007 was Name of the Wind, maybe. And 2011 was Wise Man's Fear, so 13 years.
Okay. Guys, give up. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, I don't know. There must, because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you can't, if you have it planned out, like, I don't know what the issue is. Why wouldn't you finish it in that much time? Yeah, unless he's just stuck.
I think he's stuck. I think he is a perfectionist that's terrified of a bad ending.
Yeah,
that seems to be what I hear from him.
I mean, I know not everyone is Brandon who can like put out like 1 million books a year, but like you should be at that point. A book every 2 to 3 years should be normal, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's the hard part for the Rothfuss and the Martin fans was they were at like 1 to 2 years for the first couple and then 3 to 4 years. And then all of a sudden it morphs into like 13 for Wise Man's Fear. And because the first was 4 years. It was Name of the Wind 2007, Wise Man's Fear 2011. So you're thinking, okay, yeah, 4, 5, 6 years. The other problem is that he had unmedicated, untreated mental health issues for quite a while, and relatively recently got good help with that, and is maybe on a better track. But I think he just for a long time made zero progress.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know like about that side of it, but I could definitely see how if you are that successful that quickly, because being even the amount of success that he's had, like I think Name of the Wind is his first book, so to be all of a sudden like that highly regarded, and then everybody's waiting for a book, I could see how that would trigger anxiety or depression or things like that. And so, you know, if that's the case, but I mean, even so, I mean, 13 years is a long time to wait for a book. I mean, I think with George R. R. Martin, it's a little bit different because I do think that he was so involved in the show and now shows. And so, you know, that could be that. But Rothfuss doesn't even have that excuse. So
no, he doesn't. He almost had a show at one point. Showtime was doing something with Lin-Manuel. Speaking of Martin with the show, did you hear about the kerfuffle with him making comments about the dragon show?
Is this something like he talking about dragon anatomy?
No. This is he went public with a blog that basically said, I don't think the showrunners are doing a good job adapting my book, and I don't know what they're doing. And it was pulled within, I want to say 30 minutes to an hour of him posting it because lawyers exist, and somebody went, hey, you can't do that. You have a non-disparagement clause.
Yep.
And a non-disclosure clause.
I mean, yeah. And also, wait, is he talking about like House of the Dragon?
Yeah. The movement in House of the Dragon season 2 specifically.
Okay, so I have not read any of the Song of Ice and Fire, and I haven't watched the shows, but I thought that House of the Dragon is a prequel. Like I didn't realize that it was a full-on book. Like it's adapting a book. I thought it was more like the way that Rings of Power is adapting the Silmarillion-ish.
Well, so it's funny. So it is it's a history book written by people in the universe explicitly by different points of view. So there is no canon like reality with Fire and Blood, the name of the history book, because you'll get Maester Septon says this happened, and the court fool says this happened, and then they just sit there, and you're like, I don't know which one of them actually happened,
Oh, that's
right?
cool.
It's a really interesting way to do a cover a long period of time with a single book, rather than having to do what he's doing with A Song of Ice and Fire, where it's like, oh, you cover 6 months in a book, right? He can cover hundreds of years in a few chapters, kind of thing.
Right.
And so there are some places where they've had to change or modify some things, partially because George wrote like some really creepy, weird, unfilmable things with kids getting hurt and injured and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we have to change this so that those scenes don't ever end up coming into fruition. So it's small changes that echo, but
right.
Yeah, he got into a little bit of trouble there.
Well, there's an easy solution. Write a book, and then what do you want to do? Like, yeah. I mean, have you, again, we've brought this up so many times, I feel like, but it's worth it every time to watch Brandon trying to watch Wheel of Time season 2 and him not being able to say anything is also really funny.
He is the nicest person ever about an experience that I have to assume was just miserable. For him to have the scripts. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
To have the scripts in hand and have the opportunity to say, hey guys, this is problematic. Like, not just as a super fan, like, oh, you're getting things wrong. It's like, no, from a storyteller's perspective, you're not doing arcs, you're not doing plot trajectory. Yeah, but the way that he handles it publicly so sweetly of just like, yeah, we had disagreements. It's another turning of the wheel. Like, it's impressive.
I remember when the Aragon movie came out and people were asking Christopher Paolini about it. And he was like, well, the filmmakers had their interpretation. I was like, that is the most political answer I've ever heard. Like, he was so like, well, they had their interpretation of the story. I have my interpretation of the story. That movie was unwatchable.
It was awful. It's so sad to have that kind of thing happen too, because it's a good story. Like it is a
well, they're redoing it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward
Disney
to see what they do with
it.
Yeah, who knows?
I was like, okay, it's kind of a weird place for Aragon. I guess because it was bought by because it was 20th Century Fox, so Disney had the rights to it. Just kind of weird to have it on Disney, but all right.
Yeah, they've ended up with some like the Percy Jackson that way, and now Aragon that way. When you buy everybody else's creative properties, you get to put it all on Disney Plus, I guess.
Yeah, listen, Percy Jackson fits on Disney Plus because it's aimed towards middle graders. It's got that, it does make a lot of sense. There's some really graphic, brutal stuff in Aragon that I'm like, are they going to do this on Disney Plus? Like, it kind of...
That's
I don't know. It's not too bad, but there's definitely like some heads getting chopped off and stuff.
Yeah. I think about that with Sanderson occasionally as well. He does a lot of really good. We'll talk about one of those scenes tonight. You can do a lot that is like, it's PG on the page, but if you showed it, it would be like R, right? Or even sometimes NC. like you can have a description that is exceedingly PG and like, hey, it's just it is described. You take it wherever you want to from there visually.
I think in America, there's a lot of leniencies, especially if it's with magical creatures. So like it's different if there's violence human against human. That's where you get the ratings, like gets from PG-13 to R. But if it's like a magical creature, there's like leeway there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think there could be that. I've always said I don't know how you do a PG-13 Mistborn unless you really scale it back. Even from the first book, I'm thinking about some scenes where I'm like, there's no way, unless you just really, really scale it back or you just imply a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine them not going PG-13 with it. You cut out so much of your audience immediately. if you
Right.
go R, and you can't have the first Cosmere property produced be an R-rated film. Like, that just
Right.
doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I
Um,
think that I think they'll probably just scale it back. There's some things like when when she finds Cayman, and when they find the lair,
yeah.
and when they think the scene where they think that Marsh is dead. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't read Final Empire. Um, whoops. Uh, those scenes, like you'll have to just adjust them.
Yeah.
The scenes where they're showing how you make hemorrhagic spikes, you have to adjust that. Um, yeah. I've always said, I'm like, I don't know. I'm really like, I'm such a wimp when it comes to this stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. My favorite, I don't think I'd ever heard the creatures, magical creatures exception. That makes sense.
Yeah.
My favorite exception I'd heard about was that when they were importing or exporting X-Men action figures, it became very important that they were mutants, not humans. Because if they were human dolls, it was like a certain tariff. But if they were not humans, it was a separate tariff.
Oh, that's funny. I thought you were going to go with something else because I thought you were going to go with like the Mystique
Oh.
thing. If she's like not human, then it's okay that she's basically not wearing any clothing. I don't know.
Sure. No, that's a different one. But yeah, absolutely. It's like, when is it? Yeah. Well, then you get into really weird, like, lawyers have to define what does nudity mean, and
Yeah, exactly.
it's like, oh, it's just anyway, it's two specific spots. Like, that's a weird definition. Like, I don't know, we're getting into weird spots there. But yeah, it was that X-Men had to betray their own philosophy of like, oh no, we're human. We're just, we've got a mutation. And then on, like, the lawyer's like, no, they're not humans. They are not human action figures.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I thought it would be really funny to like work in that aspect of law where you're dealing with like copyright, and so you have to kind of you're copywriting things that are like magical creatures and stuff would probably be pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine that the Venn diagram of like nerd, geek, lawyer is pretty high. But there's also a lot of people that are just like, well, I'm just doing a job, and okay, I've got to describe, a Parshendi now.
Right.
And it's like, well, what do you mean? Is it this? Is it that? Or listen, there was somebody that got into trouble, but like they got yelled at in their comment section because they were like, let me tell you all the names for the Parshendi. And then as part of it, they were describing the origin of the Parshendi and, calling them the original inhabitants of Roshar and all this stuff. And they were like, hey, we're not supposed to know that yet. And it's like, well, I mean, how do you talk about this stuff without describing some of it implicitly there?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
I am, but that sparked in me how angry I got at the Stormfather this week in my Words of Radiance reread. When Eshonai, he goes to Eshonai, right? And he's like, is this what you want? When she's got the Storm Spren and she's going to do Storm Form for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And she says no. She's like, oh, wait, this is scary. No, actually, no, I don't want to do this. And he's like, I guess I have to. It would happen no matter what, so here you go. And I'm like, she said no. What are you talking about? You have to let this happen. I was so mad.
That's the Stormfather's whole like MO is like, I must, yeah.
I have to do this. I don't have any control. It's like,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
You do. You explicitly asked her. That was the worst part. Because also, this is 7 days before she's supposed to have the meeting with Dalinar. So now she's going to show up as Stormform Eshonai instead of the Eshonai that could have talked to it. Oh, and Words of Radiance is such a frustrating book. I think on an original read it was frustrating, but on a reread where you're like, so much could have been avoided if you would talk to him and he would talk to you and you would just, oh.
And also, like, Venli is the worst, I think is the message of the whole thing. I mean, I actually, on rereading Rhythm of War, I had a little bit more sympathy for her. But then you're like, no, she's just a sniveling coward. Like, oh man, she's just the worst. But, I guess that's the journey for her, is like becoming not a horrible human being, or Parshendi, for that matter.
Yeah. I somebody said, is she not Dalinar mid redemption arc? Like where we get to
No,
watch Dalinar in real time. No, she's not. Okay, I'm listening.
it's not. I mean, I think you could make the comparison that they both are. Well, I guess if you want to say that they both start in a bad place, and then maybe, but I'll say that it's different because her journey is very. She's has more of a craving for power, I think, than Dalinar does. Dalinar doesn't seem to really crave power. He has other issues, but that doesn't seem to be one of them. For her, it really was just she wanted to be better than Eshonai. She was just jealous of her sister, and she wanted to prove something to herself, and she was just willing to sacrifice everybody in her way. And it was all about and also it was all about the glory that she herself was going to get. And it's really, I think it's different.
Is she Gavilar then?
Ooh,
Like,
well,
is that the analogy?
I think she would be closer to Gavilar, but I don't really know what Gavilar was. It seems like Gavilar had like some altruism ish. I don't know because we don't really know. I mean, he was.
Every prologue makes him look worse. I will say that.
Yeah.
Every single prologue, I hate him more. Like, I thought after Navani's prologue, I was done hating him the most that I could. Because Rhythm of War's prologue with him, where you just hear, I'm like, and then to hear it in his own head makes it worse. Usually, if you're in somebody's head, you're more sympathetic towards that person. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I guess the question is like, was he trying to bring back radiance simply for his own glory because he wanted to be radiant, he wanted that power, or was it like he believed that this was? I mean, I think you could make the case that he is more similar to Venli than Dalinar is. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I have to like give some thought.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually, it's weird. I guess because they're sisters and brothers, and they're so different in age and things like that. But like I've never actually stopped to ponder the parallels of the brothers in the brother/sister pairs in Stormlight Archive. You've got Jasnah Elhokar, you've got Adolin Renarin, you've got Dalinar Gavilar. I mean, Kaladin Tien. There's a lot of like duos that are going on, and their interactions are very different from each other.
I don't think we ever see Jasnah and Elhokar interact, which I'm kind of sad about, because they're two of the most different people in the Cosmere, and I would have liked to see. I think Jasnah that's the thing. I want to know how she felt about her brother. She does not seem to be all that dismayed when she hears that he's gone. So she actively tries to off her sister-in-law. So I don't know, but we don't really get any emotion from her on that front. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to see them interact for I guess, no, they must have some interaction in Oathbringer, but it's just so minimal.
Oh, sure. At the very beginning when she gets back before he leaves.
Yeah, it's that one scene, the one with her and Kaladin where they're sniping at each other. I guess they're both in the room. That's it. Yeah. That's the only...
Huh. Yeah, in Way of Kings, she references her brother a couple of times. Don't you realize what my brother would have done to you if you had stolen the Soulcaster? It's yes, I can't imagine what Elhokar would have done.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
But yeah, we just don't really get a lot of... I think there's a pretty big age gap between them. There must be, because...
Yeah, that's pretty decent.
I think... Yeah, I think Elhokar was pretty young. The more I think, I was thinking about this over the weekend, I think he must be in his late 20s at the time of Way of Kings. Because I think... I don't know why I was thinking that, but I think he...
Go ahead.
No, I was thinking, I think that there is I think there is a bit of an age... I think Jasnah is 34, right? I don't know. We have a list somewhere.
Yeah, she's 34 at the time when all the stuff's going down. And I was just going to compare their birth dates. She's 7 years older.
Right. So if she's 7 years older and she's 34, like let's say in Words of Radiance, would she be like 34 or 33?
Oh my gosh. Um, that's amazing. I just learned a new feature this spreadsheet has. I'm going to show it off. So if you Google Stormlight Archive spreadsheet timeline, Joffwu/Josh, his spreadsheet will pop up. And let's see. It has the ability to have a column pop out that will show the age of a particular character at a particular time. Cool. So like when I can just immediately know, when Risen and Vistim trade with the Reshi, Yasna was 33.8 years old, roughly. That is, it's so detailed. I love that. Okay. But yes, so she was 34, so he'd be 27.
Like 26 or 27, which is so young. Like we give Elhokar such a hard time because he's a terrible king, but he's like, really young.
Yeah. And he had no one to train him. He had Sadeas to manipulate him, Gavilar or Dalinar to protect him. But Dalinar was like, he lost his memories, and he was like, I can't do anything that looks like I'm trying to take over the throne. And so Elhokar just does his own thing. There's just nothing there to train him into becoming the person he needed to be.
Right. It's weird to think of him being only like 3 years older than Adolin. I don't know why. It's like just hitting me as like really strange. I think when you first read it, you expect him to be, because he's married with the kids. I don't know. I guess like I just expected him to be, and he's the king. You just expect him to be a little bit older. But he's just, he's young. He's really young.
Yeah. It is we've talked about last week about how young people on Roshar just generally are. We do get our first POV character in a long time that's not young. We'll talk about her in a minute.
And I was laughing actually when I read that. I was like, oh my gosh, we literally were just talking about this.
So speaking of which, why don't we start off with the first huge, it's hilarious to me that for my Cosmere reading brain, hilariously, the biggest things for both day 1 and day 2 have been the fact that it's day 1, day 2 instead of part 1, part 2, and then 2, the amount of point of view characters. So in this part, we're gonna have Dalinar, Yasna, Navani, Fen, Yanagon, Adolin, Shallan, Zeth, Zigzal, Kaladin, Lift, Renarin, Relaine, and Lopin.
Most of which are in this first chapter.
It's true. We also have one of my favorite framing devices. The blank was not asleep. From a prose perspective, it was just such a fun... Brandon doesn't play with prose very often when he's writing, and this was just such a fun way for him to play with a way to write. Made me very happy to see this.
I feel like he's done this somewhere before, or something similar to this, but I can't pick out when. So if anybody can... I don't know why, but it's like causing something to go off in my brain. Like where he's done something like this, not to this extent, but like back-to-back chapters. So-and-so was this, and then the next chapter is, so like where it's like a mirroring. If that makes any sense. But I can't think of where it is.
Yeah, I have no memory of it either. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I remember reading it and going, this is really fun. I'm very happy that he wrote this way. It's just fun. And chapter iconography for this one is the Shadesmar sun, which is a Yasna. So it's interesting that we got Yasna's picture for this chapter. I think she's got quite a lot going on there in the middle. And for all the people who are playing Guess Who at home as to who wrote the Wind and Truth book, give up, because you're getting no new information about that book, at least for this part. Instead, we have the Way of Kings' fourth parable. As I approached the first crossroads, I met a family seeking a new life is our new epigraphs for this section.
Which is just frustrating.
Yes.
I was like, really, really, Brandon? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, we wouldn't want it to be spoiled that early who wrote the book. And at this point it was like, we have now exhausted every character. So.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, at this point you could just put your flag in just about anything. It seems like they have to be from Roshar because they knew the wind as a kid. And then past that, it's like, I don't know. And they have to not know about Kaladin and Zet's quest.
I know, that's the sticker. I mean, I think, honestly, there's a possibility it's a character who we're going to meet in Wind and Truth. Because I'm stuck. I don't know. Unless it's like Sazed, which was my, like, last... No, but he doesn't even make sense anymore because of the wind thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I give up. I was just like, I'm done. I don't know. And I'll just have to wait and find out.
Yeah, it is a read and find out literally game. Hopefully, certainly. I can't imagine we get to the end and Brandon's like, haha, you'll find out in book 6. Oh, speaking of which, that was a thread I was going to leave. I was going to connect back up. We do have the chance, and probably will, in, I don't know, I'm going to guess 18 years from now, we'll be getting Yasna flashbacks. And so that will, in theory, allow us to get some Elhokar interactions if there's anything meaningful there.
Oh, good. I just have to wait 18 years.
I was joking with somebody else. I was like, because we both have kids about the same age. And I'm like, yeah, so we're excited to one day read with them. But do you realize they'll probably be like graduating college before this series is done?
Seriously.
It's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Things says, I'm really excited we're getting Way of Kings stuff. I like it. I agree. I think that it'll be really fun to see more of the Way of Kings, particularly because I imagine, we're going to be applying it to Ishar and his mental health journey and his craziness once we get back to Shinovar.
I still think that the book on the cover art for Wind and Truth, the one, because Dalinar's holding a book. Mm-hmm. I think that's Way of Kings.
I think it has to be. Whether it really is, or whether it thematically is supposed to be, right? Like, I think that Waylon was drawing. I mean, I think if I go way back into my brain, book 3 was originally supposed to be Zeth's book, and book 5 was supposed to be Dalinar's book. I imagine that Brandon has had Dalinar confronting Odium while holding the Way of Kings as like emblematic of the Stormlight archive. Right. And so I would imagine that is similar to the Battle of Thaylen Field, kind of just that picture that we want to have. Katie, Art BZD, we are unfortunately jumping into Wind and Truth spoilers now, so I'm sorry. But thank you for coming. You have great art also.
You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay.
Oh, Katie is the one that apologized to me for spoiling Red Rising, because she told me that at one point the audiobook narrator switched from Cassius to Cassius. And that was a spoiler in her mind, that there was a change in pronunciation at some point. So I've always tried to respect her her desires for spoilers.
Like, that's a big spoiler.
No, just the pronunciation thing. So we've been friends since college, and so I try to be very careful with that. Yeah, she's awesome.
Well, I am Katie, stay away from me because I am very bad about. Yeah, I notoriously asked my sister was reading Rhythm of War, and I was like, "Oh, did you get up to?" I was like, "Oh, so you're past when Raboniel kills her daughter?" She was like, "Nope." Whoops.
Yeah. It gets also hard. Go ahead.
No, speaking of Red Rising spoilers, I spoiled the entire ending of Red Rising for my mother before she read it. But you know what? She still enjoyed it, so.
Ooh, I want to do a plug real quick for a non-Cosmere thing, because I want it to do really, really well, because it's amazing. The Wild Robot.
I've been hearing so much about this. Should I go and see it?
Yes, 100%. It's beautiful. It's animated well. It is. It has more dialogue than I was expecting. This robot basically learns how to understand how animals talk, and so the animals start off not communicating, and then about, I don't know, 20 minutes in, they're able to talk to the robot, and the robot talks back. Oh, but as a person who like has fostered, adopted, and has gone that journey, it is. I mean, just any relationship with children. I mean, you teach, like, it just is brutal. I was in tears
Wow.
for like 60% of the end of the
I
movie.
saw. I don't know if you like. I watched. You know Dan Merle from who was on Screen Junkies. So I saw his review, and he was like, "I'm not even saying go." He's like, "I'm saying please go see this movie." And I was like, "Okay, if Dan Merle is suggesting it, then
Yes.
you know, 'cause I
Yes,
trust him.
yes, I had watched it before I'd seen any reviews of it, and I was so happy when Dan went on there, because I like his reviews, I like his perspective on things. He's usually pretty accurate, and I tend to agree with him. And so for him to line up with me, I even still watch a little bit of Doug from the Nostalgia Critic, and he even liked it, and he even was like, "Yeah, go watch the movie." So I was like, "Awesome!" If all these people are normally like, "Oh, are hard crusted," and they're like, "This is such a pretty movie," and it's got 2 sequels. It's got, like, it's a book series, and it's got 2 books after it. So I would just
I've heard amazing things about it. I just have to see when I'm gonna have time, because honestly, the next couple weeks are going to be crazy for me. So but I've seen enough reviews of it now that I'm like, okay, I think this is sort of, it's giving me like Into the Spider-Verse vibes, where I originally was like, I have no interest in this, and then it became like my favorite movie of all time. So yeah, we'll have to.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of no time, we've got these characters 8 days left to go, and they're not even sleeping. So Brandon's even going to take us to their midnight vigils. Anything from Dalinar that you want to talk about? I have a thing first. I'm sorry,
okay. But go for it.
Jason is going to try to join.
Ooh,
I think. Nice. Hey, Jason.
Hi. Perfect. Sorry I'm late. I've never done live on TikTok before. I had my entire PC set up ready to go, and
oh no,
that didn't work.
Yeah, at least as of the last time that we've been monkeying around with people, it's weird. You can multi-host, but then we don't all share a chat. And it's like, you have a chat, and Shayndl has a chat, and I have a chat. And it gets really, like, you can't do some of the things you can with multi-guesting from the computer. It's really weird. I'm sure there's some technical reason why they did it that way, but...
yeah. I doubt that. Honestly, the more we do this, like every week, and we come across these crazy, technical problems, I'm like, this app was not set up for the amount of people that joined it.
No, certainly not.
Jason says, great name. I'm assuming he means the Jason part.
I think so.
But I still love the story you told me about how you got your name. Because I messaged you and I was like, hey, so are you like the Jason Smithsonian? Is that what's happening there? And I don't know if you want to share that story or not, but I appreciated how you got to Jasonioan as your name.
Yeah, so I'll tell that story real quick. And sorry, it's telling me I don't have permission to use my camera, so it's just void Jason for now. Yeah, so my dad would call me the Jasonian. And when I was 11 years old and wanted to make a Minecraft account, I wanted my character to be named Jasonian. And so I asked my dad, hey, is like Jasonian spelled with an O or an A? And he just said yes. So I just threw all the vowels in there at the end.
It's very Elantrian of you. Have all of the vowels there.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm sort of the opposite, where I have no vowels, so I'm very Thalen.
I have no vowels also. That's interesting. I never thought about
Whoa. I mean, your name isn't actually CJ, is it?
Okay. No, yeah, it's really CJ. Yeah. That's what the joke is, like when we were doing the birth certificate thing, they were charging by the letter and you had to buy the vowels.
That's funny.
Yep. That unfortunately the CJ story is less of a fun one, so I'll do that another day when it's like a little bit less happy and light. So, Jason, we've talked about day 2 having a bajillion points of view. We've talked about
Facts.
Way of Kings for the epigraphs, and then the fun prose of Blank was not asleep. And then I was going to bring up the first thought for Dalinar, which is, oh, it is so brutal to hear how much Dalinar wishes Gavilar was there instead of him. And he's like, oh, if only my brother was here. How much Dalinar wishes Gavilar was there instead of him. And he's like, oh, if only my brother was here. I am back. That was weird.
See, it's because we were talking about things going well.
You're not wrong. Oh my goodness. But yeah, Dalinar's thoughts about how he wishes he could be as cool as Gavilar and have finished the war already. And little does he know that his brother basically caused all of this to happen. Because if he doesn't try to bring the Radiance back, Eshonai and Venli don't freak out. Venli doesn't go pursuing all the crazy stuff the way that she did. At least not as fast, right? It would have been slower at least. Anything else from Dalinar's section that y'all want to talk about?
I mean, yeah, I had the same thought as you. Like, it's sad that he still has this idea of his brother in his mind. And also, like, kind of good on Navani for not shattering that. Like, she could say, your brother was a jerk. But she kind of wants him to have this memory of his brother. And so it's, like, sad in, you know, that he feels alone and he wishes that his brother was there. But also, at the same time, like, we, the reader, know, yeah, not so much.
There's even a moment in Way of Kings where she tries to tell him more about Gavilar, and Dalinar's like, no, do not speak ill of my brother. So I wouldn't be super shocked if there was a little bit of the Shallan, no, I don't want to hear the truth. And so Navani's almost the pattern in that moment of like, okay, like, that's fine. Go ahead.
I think she says, I didn't. She's more talking about her own feelings. She's like, we didn't love each other kind of thing. Oh, sure. He doesn't say like he abused me. Which is kind of, you know.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would go over super well. On one hand, it does kind of suck that Alethkar still mythologizes this guy when in reality he was the worst. I do wonder what will happen, if anything, if Gavilar's true nature comes to light, especially with the Stormfather withholding information. Maybe those lips will be looser later.
Yeah, it's a really weird set of circumstances for them. I have wondered, you know, if we're talking about the spiritual realm, will Dalinar see some real Gavilar in action? Who knows? It's, you know,
it would
are
be
the
interesting.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
I was going to say maybe the prologues, you know, some of what we have seen. It'd be interesting if the interludes and the prologues, we learn that whoever goes into the spiritual realm saw some of those, right? Like, so Sanderson can refer to them as like, oh, you know, you saw this, you know, you saw the same night from 5 different perspectives or whatever. Sanderson can refer to them as like, oh, you know, you saw this, you know, you saw the same night from 5 different perspectives or whatever.
We also don't really know exactly what Gavilar was up to, so depending on what we find out, he's back.
Welcome back.
We're gonna try sharing my Wi-Fi via hotspot from this phone, and somehow that's different. I don't know why, but at the moment it's different. Let's see. I think I could hear everything you said. It looked like the stream was potentially paused, so I don't think they did, which is super fun. They were very insightful, chat. It was great. They were brilliant in their. I think partly basic to summarize, I would say it will be interesting to see whether Dalinar can reconcile who Gavilar was with his vision of Gavilar, because so much of his identity is like saving Gavilar's vision and all of those things. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
From the chat, Thing says, I think Gavilar is going to be Odium's champion.
It's a bold prediction.
My problem with it, because I've heard people say it for a long time, because of the whole snatching cognitive shadows out of Shadesmar deal. My problem is if you were going to do it, I think you would have to have a hint in the prologue. You'd have to have something. You know, as he dies, he feels a ripping sensation, or I don't know, you know, is confronted by a golden red light. I think without those, it would feel very strange to suddenly have that happen. Jason, any thoughts?
I agree. Gavilar's death reads like other permanent deaths we've seen.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the only exception would be like, you know, Kelsier's death seems quite permanent, and then it's not. And there's spoilers.
True.
But I do agree with you guys. I think that Brandon tries to do that as sparingly as possible, and when he does bring someone back, he tries to make it as obvious as possible that they're not actually gone. So I don't think it will. I think Gavilar is gone. But
on a reread to that point, there are far more hints about Yasna than I thought there were. It's still not clear and obvious, which I think it was in the original version, and so it got changed up for the final draft. But there's a moment where Shallan thinks she should have walked into Yasna's corpse, and she doesn't. And she's like, well, did I just walk past it? Like, what happened? And it's because the corpse is already in Shadesmar at that point. Like, she's left. And that's why Shallan doesn't bump into her. But Shallan writes it off as like, oh, I must have like just walked around her in the darkness. So, I mean, there are hints there. It's just, they're very small. and you write them off.
I mean, I think you're supposed to be able to figure it out. Like, once you realize that Radiance could like, nothing's going to kill them. So then you're supposed to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So...
Which, I mean, it's funny. They even drip feed that to Shallan because Shallan doesn't know that Stormlight heals you at that moment. She only slowly discovers it when she's in the caravan and she's got, you know, busted up feet and she breathes in some Stormlight and the Stormlight goes away and then her feet are better. And she's like, wait, what? Whereas that's one of the first things Kaladin learns about because, you know, he's in a battlefield and all this stuff. Let's see. Jason says, I'd love for Dalinar to talk to Vin or Elend in the spiritual realm. I would not.
They're in the spiritual realm.
Well, right. I mean, this is the problem, right? I mean, everyone's in the spiritual realm if time and place are not actually a thing. If truly time is tesseracted on top of each other, I've been having this debate as to whether or not that includes the future. So from your perspective, you know, in the timeline, can it include the future or is it just the past? Because if it's the past, then yeah, I mean, technically you could interact with a spiritual realm version of Vin and Elend just as easily as you could Tien, right? Like if you could draw the connection points.
Oh. Yeah, but I don't know if we're so clear about Tien, if that was really him or not. Like, so it's something that's not clear in the Cosmere that Brandon has never really clarified is what happens to people when they die in the Cosmere. Is there some sort of beyond, like a heaven, if you will, versus, like, because I don't think the spiritual realm is heaven, but it very clearly is some sort of resting place. So it's not totally clear.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Jason.
Sazed, he mentions that when people pass, they go somewhere that he can't even see.
Right.
And the shards, they mostly reside in the spiritual realm, and that's where they see all the futures and the past and all that stuff. So if it were the spiritual realm, I don't know why Sazed would be like, I don't know where they are, dude.
What's tricky, so we have cognitive shadows. We have a term for the existence of a person that persists after death because the magic infuses them enough and they leave like a fossilized version of themselves and or themselves behind, right? That's debatable, etc. You know, but then do we also have a spiritual realm version of that? Because like all matter exists, physical, cognitive, spiritual. Spiritual realm is, like Jason was saying, that's where the shards, their power resides, so it can go everywhere. Like if I burn metal, preservation's power meets me wherever I am, right? Whether I'm on Scadrial or Roshar or 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future, as long as preservation still exists, that power can go into me. And so I think I'm okay with the past. Everything up until this point has left like a spiritual realm thing that you can reach in and touch. Because to me, for time not to have a significance, then it can't really be that different from Tien 5 years ago versus Tien or Vin 300 years ago. It gets really weird really fast. But I do think we need to keep very clear there's the beyond where you go after you die, and then where your essence goes after you die, whether you persist or not is unknown. Right. And then you have the spiritual realm, which is where fortune, investiture, some higher version of yourself than even how you think of yourself. So it's not even how I think of myself, it's what I am, if that makes any sense. It's weird.
Right. I mean, we don't really know a lot about the spiritual realm, honestly, like, I think we will find out more in this book, but we just don't know enough about, like, we know a lot about the cognitive realm, so we can say, like, we know what happens in the cognitive realm, but it's not total, the spiritual realm is still kind of not totally clear. I don't know what it does. I think that's where people get confused, because people hear the spiritual realm, so they assume that means heaven, right? Like, that's what you would assume, but it seems like that's not the case. Yeah. So it is kind of weird. And then you get, like, the Tien being connected to Kaladin, but that's sort of him being pulled. They're sort of meeting in the middle. I don't know if you could like go into the spiritual realm and then, I don't think it's a time machine. Meaning, I don't know if you could like hop into the spiritual realm and then like just travel around. I don't know if that's the case. And also, if that was the case, would we not have already seen that in Mistborn earlier? Because this is where we get into like some really, that's what I'm saying. It's like sort of a time travel-y thing. Like it seems like I don't think that's where Brandon wants to go with it. So.
Yeah, I think the closest we've seen to them are because I forget when it got brought up, but the idea that the visions are like the visions, Tien, like what happens with Noadon for Dalinar, like there's something going on where you're connecting to an impression from the past, and now you're able to experience it in the present. So kind of a time machine backwards.
I mean, yeah, like listen, the scene with Tien, he is talking to Kaladin and they're having a conversation, and it seems like Tien knows what's going on. Like he seems, right? It's not like when Dalinar has the visions, so he can interact with the world, but it's almost like interactive theater or like a video game where everybody is just interactive theater or like a video game where everybody is just programmed to say something.
Doesn't look like much to me. Doesn't look like much. Yeah.
Exactly. But like with Tien, it is very different. Like I think Tien is an anomaly that we haven't seen before. And I don't know if we'll see after. So yeah, it's interesting stuff though.
Let's see. And then before we get into Yasna, Jason says, who is your guess for Odium's champion at this point?
I don't know. I'm not good at this kind of stuff. I'm always wrong.
Well, to be fair, almost every guess will be wrong, right? It's only one correct answer.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
you can shoot your shot with everybody else. I think my shot is Ishar. That's my like tinfoil hat. He'll be Odium's champion while believing he's Honor's champion. We'll see, but I think that'd be a fun way to resolve a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. I can see it being many different people for many different reasons, which is a very lame answer, I know. But one thing that I do know for certain is that for something this big, Sanderson wouldn't make it abundantly obvious, but it will make sense.
Yeah. Oh, 100. Like we'll do a reread of the series. We'll be like, oh my gosh, it was there the entire time. It this and this and this and this, and all of a sudden you can see all of the breadcrumbs that led there, like neon signs.
The only thing that I would say about that is that we did get a switch in who the villain is, because the person that Reyes might have chosen is not the person that Taravangian is going to choose.
No.
So I don't know. I don't know. That's what's confusing me. Like if it was Reyes, I would have said Moash, or something like that. I don't know if Taravangian, he's a little bit more calculated. So I don't know.
Okay, it's a chasm fiend. Dalinar has to 1v1 a chasm fiend. No shard blade.
Or he chooses himself. I don't know if that's possible. I think that defeats the whole point of a champion, but
I would be terrifying, right? I mean, a shard versus a person. I think the person loses immediately. Like,
I would imagine that would allow Odium to act directly. That would be he would be putting himself in Odium's power because as per the contract.
Yeah.
Right. That was my thought, is that Dalinar is his own champion, so why wouldn't Odium?
I think probably Dalinar went into that contract assuming it wasn't possible, right? He just was like, oh, well, obviously you'll have to pick somebody, like I have to pick somebody. And because even all the way back in the Visions, Honor seemed to think that Odium would have to choose a champion other than himself, right? He was like, oh, you might be able to force him to pick a champion. So yeah, seems like you would have put some terms in there to be like, hey, the champion has to be mortal. The champion has to be human or listener or fused. Something like that. What'd you say?
I said, like, here's a puppy. Like, so this is sort of like the Gavinor theory, which I don't think is the case, but.
Yeah, I will say the Adolin theory got some ground this week.
No,
we'll talk about that.
No, it didn't.
It gained more ground than it had a week ago.
You'll get into this later.
Passion Spren, Shayndl. I'm just saying, they're pulling Passion Spren.
Yeah, I am burdened with foreknowledge, so it only gets worse, but...
All right. Yasna was not asleep. Did Wit burn metals without drinking them? Does he just keep steel in his gut at all times? What's going on? That's my lead in.
If I were him, I would keep steel on me at all times. But also, I've been saying this ever since he became a Lightweaver. The most overpowered thing a Mistborn can do is to make metal appear out of nothing. So he might have been soul casting that into his belly. Like, that guy has infinite metal assuming he has access to investiture.
All right. So your thesis, Jason, as I heard it, is a Mistborn that is also a Lightweaver could, in theory, soul cast the food/stomach acid in their own body into metal, and then burn that metal for power. Is that the basic thesis there?
Yep, you heard me. Also, think about how cool it could be if he has to steel push all over the place, is missing an anchor. Oh, this statue is now metal. Look at that. Poof.
Oh, I've not thought about the capacity to soul cast in that way before.
Can you soul cast things into metal?
You can.
Yes, you can. Yeah. You can even make aluminum out of soul casting, which is insane. You can't change it after the fact, but
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't do that. My only so I guess what I'm trying, and this is like weird, but I was looking very closely. He doesn't drink anything before he just starts pushing all of the metal away from him. And we'll go through and we'll kind of count out all the different powers that he shows off here. There's the steel pushing, like he pushes everything away from him. And in case it wasn't obvious enough, Yasna mentions, even my shoes got pushed away by her buckles. It's like, cool, steel pushing. We got it, Brandon. We understand what he's doing there. But he doesn't drink anything. So I'm like, okay, does he have the capacity to, like you said, Jason, he might just have the steel in him already. He might have the ability to soul cast steel into his own person somewhere. Maybe the way that he used the Lerasium let him copy the access without having to then burn the metals. Like, can he fuel Allomancy the way that Vasher is fueling his breaths? His existence?
I don't see why not. Unkeyed investitures we've seen can be used to power Allomancy. So, assuming he has access to it, I don't see why he couldn't just use that to burn metals.
Yeah,
I think the most likely answer is that he's constantly burning something.
That's my
like
secret
a very
cap.
low, I mean, otherwise, yeah, we're getting really like, burning acid. I just don't know. But it's a cool idea.
Yeah, I guess there's no... Okay, this is hurting my brain now. There's no reason why a person of Hoid's knowledge, couldn't take breaths that he has. I mean, they'd be gone, so there's a reason not to use them up that way. But, like, because all you need once you're an Allomancer is investiture to flow through the spirit web. You don't need any the metals themselves. The metals are just access to free preservation investiture. Backing up a little, poor Yasna has to sleep in an uncomfortable bed that reminds her of her prison every night.
Oof.
Ugh.
Yeah, ouch. That's
Speaking
cool.
about 18 years from now, flashbacks that are going to like gut me like a little child. I mean, poor Yasna in like soft cuffs and locked away in a room that everybody forgot about? What?
Yeah, if it's anything like Way of Kings Prime,
Away in a room that everybody forgot about? What?
Yeah, if it's anything like Way of Kings Prime, taking a drink again.
I have to say, like, from a like character's point of view, I thought this was amazing. Like, we got so much insight into Yasna's character in this, probably like the most we've ever gotten from her. Just like her emotional state and the way that she thinks about things, the way that she views relationships. There was one line, I'm trying to find it out, that was really funny to me, where it says like she was like, but this is how relationships are. She'd read like something like that, where like you can see like, she's just so like, everything is just by the book, and if that she's just read that it's like this. I'm trying to find where it is. But I loved it. I thought,
yeah. Yasna liked trying new things. This relationship itself was, in a way, such an experiment. She'd enjoyed it for many reasons. The scheming, the sharing of incredible plans, the chance to connect with someone so intellectually stimulating. Relationships were about compromise, she had read, and so she procured a new bed.
Right. That made me laugh out loud. I was like, they're about compromise, she'd read. Like, she's so clueless about relationships that she's like, she's read a book about it, and now she's going to do that.
Yeah. I appreciate her.
Is she compromising? Like, what concessions is Hoid making here? I'm only seeing like some slack given by Yasna.
There is a second bed, right? Like she mentions how there's another bed in the next room, so maybe she doesn't sleep there every night, perhaps? I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, goodness. Design just hanging out on the wall is wonderful. It's fun to see like early design. We've seen a lot of design in the secret projects, and then now to see like younger design. one of the secret
I will
projects.
say also, this chapter for me was, I remember we talked about this last week, how sometimes when you start getting these new chapters, it can feel a little bit almost like fanfic because it's been so long since we've gotten Stormlight. And for me, this was where I was like, yep, I'm back in. I fully am like, this is, especially I loved that we got was when in this scene with Yasna, when Wit suddenly sits up and then it's like, bam, bam, bam. I was like, okay, here we go. Like I think we're still setting up pieces. Like I was like, okay, I got that right. Where we're still everybody like chess piece, we're setting up. But this was like, and now it's gonna hit. Like, so that was really cool.
Yes, I mean this is the moment that many of us have been waiting for since the epilogue for Rhythm of War, right? Years ago, is Hoyd realizing that he's been tricked, and it does not disappoint at all.
Yep.
Let's see. While I'm getting down, we'll get to all the different powers and things he shows off. We have some comments here. The Thing says, I hope we learn about the lunacy in this book. Otherwise, if you're foreshadowing it for like 25 years, it better be huge. Thing, we've been getting hints at it since Oathbringer, I think. Maybe even the prologue to Words of Radiance, and we haven't gotten much forward movement on it. I agree. It's part of the trick of waiting to do her flashbacks for 6 books from now, that he might not do anything with it explicitly on page for 20 years. It's hard to imagine, but it's such a big book series. Who knows, right? Another thing, too, I think about from time to time is like we're living through it right now as, a 30, 40-year project. In 50 years, some kid's going to pick up these books and read them in a summer, right? Like they're going to read all 10 books of the Stormlight Archive over their summer break because they have nothing else to do. And to them, it's going to be like a month before they learn what happened to Yasna. So, I can respect his desire to create the 10-book series he wants to, even though for us, it'll take 25 years to get the full picture.
Yeah. When Hoy's writing with the symbols, with the dots and the dashes, those are like the Mistborn, the Allomancy symbols, right?
That's what I interpreted it as, yeah.
Yeah, that seems the most likely, right? Because they use the dots and lines.
The steel alphabet.
Right.
Yeah.
Which seems strange. Like, why would he be writing it, do we know what he's doing there? Any guesses on what that is about? Or...
What is she says it has a certain number of columns and rows, right? It's a table. I presumed it was some kind of way to calculate the breaths, to figure out when it would have been missing and how much would have been missing.
Oh, we're back.
Oh, was I gone for a minute? Sorry. Oh, Shayndl, you're gone for a moment.
Oh, I think it's yeah. No, I think it was me actually this time. I think it's because of also, I don't know if about you where you are, but we've been having like just rain constantly because of the hurricanes down south. And so.
Yes. And I'm told more coming, which is.
Oh, great.
Jason says, I'm curious if Hoyd's time matches up with the audiobook time at 1x speed. That would be amusing. So we see sand being used to calculate investiture. Fabrial alarms go off, presumably doing something similar to the sand, detecting the use of investiture. He changes shape.
Yeah. Which we get to see him with the white hair.
Right, which presumably is what Lift sees when she looks at him. Just normally, she's able to see both versions because she references him in that form at some point. And someone's like, what are you talking about? There's no old guy with white hair running around here. So crazy.
That's another thing that I always get like flack for whenever I paint Hoyd. They're like, there's always somebody that's like, why does he have white hair? And the other person's like, why does he have black hair? I just never can never satisfy anybody.
Even young Hoyd has white hair. Sorry for cutting you off. I was just saying that in pretty much every adaptation, when he's in disguise, well, when he's not in disguise, he has white hair. So that's it.
Yeah, what does it mean to be young
he also
Hoyd,
like
I guess?
his night clothes beginning to like move. That's like a breath thing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's my assumption. Yeah.
Yeah.
The body shape, is that, do we think that's similar in concept to the return / cognitive shadow capacity to just change your shape based upon perspective? Or what do you think's going on there?
I have no idea.
I mean, I have an idea that kind of makes sense and one that I don't think. Dragons can shapeshift. I do not think Hoyd Topaz is a dragon, so that's off the table. Being able to change your physical appearance is something that we've seen returned or re-embodied cognitive shadows do, or someone with the royal locks, or a sufficient amount of investitures stapled to their soul. So I guess it would just have to be part of that, because he is crazy invested. And I don't think it's a light weaving, because he would have had to have been doing that the whole time. And there's not a form of Yolish magic that I'm familiar with that would allow him to just change his shape on a whim.
Yeah, and even Yasna says it's not an illusion, so...
That's one of the few times where I'm willing to take a character's first under, like when Yasna's like, okay, yeah, this is not an illusion. I'm like, yep, I'm with you. I agree.
Right.
Oftentimes when Brandon writes like a first perspective on something, I'm like, was it? Is it really? Is that correct? But I think she's right there.
Yeah. By the way, just seeing the two of them panic is very unsettling.
Yes.
They are two of the most steady, non-panicky characters in the Cosmere. So to see both of them like freaking out, to me, I was like also getting like heart palpitations. I was like, oh, this is not good. So
yeah, I'm thinking Yasna did a very good job of not just clocking him. What were you doing? Oh, I met with Odium. You met with Odium? The enemy of all mankind? Yeah. Why? Well, I had to gloat. I mean, it's what I do. What are you talking about? You didn't have a purpose? You literally just did it to go gloat? Kama, however, if he had not done it, we would have 0 hints about Taravangian being Odium as opposed to Reyes. So... Good on you, Wit, even though it was not the correct call at all.
I mean, but also, like, why doesn't he think that maybe somebody has taken over the shard? Because he knows that that's happened before. And he's obviously, like, because he says he's grown after 10,000 years. Race has actually learned something. It's like, no, he hasn't. It's just a completely different person. I don't know why, like, he,
Yeah, if I'm Hoyd, right? This is my enemy now for 10,000 years. I probably just assume my enemy can't lose, right? Like, I'm going to be the one who defeats my enemy. So it can't possibly be that Reyes has lost and been replaced, because I'm the one who's going to stop Reyes. So I'm betting it's more of that egotistical, he just can't fathom that somebody else took Reyes out. And so he's thinking, okay, well, he's changed, he's learned something. That's terrifying. Well, now we'll see if anybody else figures it out.
Right. Does cultivation have any relationship with Hoyd? I remember he mentions her at one point and he says, like, she doesn't talk to me anymore or something. Why wouldn't she tell them? Or is she going to tell them?
That's a great
Is that
question,
how-
right?
Is cultivation going to tell our heroes that Odium is now Teravangian? Is that the
It
question?
seems like it's kind of important if she's on their side. Like, hello, this might be important information for them to know.
I don't think cultivation is on the side of our heroes. I think she is a interested third party that wants to see how these people grow and rise to the occasion of dealing with this existential threat. I don't think she's right for doing this. She's clearly playing her own game, but it does not seem conducive to how I see cultivation to be like, oh, hey, guess what I did? I did this thing and ascended your enemy.
But
Yeah, I mean, we
at the end
just
of this chapter, we do get cultivation coming to Dalinar.
Yep. And I think their conversation really will set up, is cultivation helping or is cultivation just doing her own thing, right? The easiest way to tell that cultivation is on our side is for her to go, hey, just so you know, Raze isn't the shard holder anymore. It's Teravangian. That's my fault. Love it or hate it. I thought it was best for the planet. Because we just saw, this is really interesting. We just saw the interlude where she's like, hey, stay out of things, don't have direct intervention, etc., etc. Next chapter, hey, Dalinar, want to have a chat? It's like, wait a minute. It's a little bit. So, she can't be there to completely directly intervene because, that's not what she does. But she might push some things in some directions.
Well, when we say she doesn't intervene, I mean, she does. She just pretends. She did. She intervened 3 times with Teravangian, Dalinar, and Lift, and then she intervened again when Teravangian becomes Odium. I wouldn't call that not intervening.
They came to her, right? So that's the biggest difference. Is that seems to follow the Shardic rule of giving yourself over to the Shard. People who come, oh, that's such a brilliant system. Now that I say that out loud, you create the Night Watcher Valley so that people will come to you, give themselves over to you completely, and then you can, if you want to, you can do whatever you want to with those people because those are individuals who are now, within your realm of influence. That's smart. I think Hoyd and her, they both helped shatter Adonalsium, so they know each other from that crime caper. I think there's like some allusions to maybe them having dated potentially, like Brandon, has said some things along those lines. But they are not friends at this point, right? He's said the only dragon around here doesn't like me anymore, things like that. So, he's got to go to somebody else for help.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, is she gonna, come and tell her, But no, clearly not.
I do really appreciate.
Quick,
oh, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Just answering a question in the comment about whether or not Dust had white hair. I've been flipping through Warbreaker here. He has no mention of his hair color, but he does have a bleached white beard. So maybe, I would imagine there's white hair to go along with that. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Okay, help me out, because I saw that question as well, and my brain just kind of went, Dust is
the alias that Hoyd used on Nalthis, but what is strange is the chapter I just read where he's talking to Ciri, he goes by Hoyd, but he did go by Dust in the book in other parts.
That's funny. Jason said Hoyd's old friend. Could it be Vasher? Could be. I don't know that Vasher is who I'd go to for like interpreting contracts, but it's certainly possible.
Could it be Chris?
I like Chris. When I read that, I went to Frost from the first Way of Kings letter interlude, where like Hoyd and Frost start sending letters back and forth. To me, that like anytime Wit or Hoyd talks about an old friend from Offworld, that's who I go to immediately.
Gotcha.
I did really appreciate Yasna being like, "Hey, man, you missed this the first time. Why do you think reading it again you're gonna catch it? Go get some help." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's a good point. I should get some help."
Yeah, I mean, it's also the first time that we really see Hoyd like out of his depth. Like what I was saying before is like it's just really, really unsettling. See, but he's so frantic. It's just such a
Mom and Dad don't
Also,
know what to
yeah.
do anymore. Mom and Dad can't do
Yeah.
everything.
It really does feel that way. How does he like? What do we think that while he's sleeping, he's like going through? How did that happen? How did he figure out all of a sudden I'm missing 3 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's possible that like he doesn't. I mean, if Navani doesn't need to sleep, feels like Hoyd would set himself up to not need sleep, or even some of the time to be doing like a meditative type thing. I think it's very possible. Yeah, you're like reliving, recataloging your memories and figuring it out, and you're going, wait a minute, there's something missing here. I will be right back. Jason, any thoughts on that?
It just seems to me that it's a process he goes through every now and then, just checking his breaths to see what he needs and what he doesn't. And
While he's asleep.
yeah, I went. It sounds like a good time to do it to me. Nothing else going on. Keep up appearances of being somewhat normal, which, he doesn't do very often. He doesn't care if he appears normal to most people.
Right. He also does say that at the end here, he says, on your world, only one, but she and I aren't on speaking terms. So I guess that would be, I'm assuming he's talking about cultivation there.
I think so.
So.
Yeah, Hoyt has burned a lot of bridges. 17th Shard doesn't like him. Previous friends in the killing of Adonalcium don't seem to care for him.
He's kind of annoying.
He is. He's a bit of an annoying know-it-all who likes, has his own plans, and if you aren't on board with them, then you can leave.
I mean, even Yasna says, she's like, I told you to tell me when you're doing things and you just left me out. Like, he just has this...
But I did tell you, right now.
Right.
That is the worst. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been there have been more chapters. Is this the chapter that everybody was talking about with Yasna and Wit, or is there another chapter that Brandon released? There's another one?
No, this is the same one.
Oh, this is it. I don't see their relationship going on very long.
No.
Well, there's a good solid. He's going to be leaving the planet relatively soon because he has to show up over in Scadrial to go take care of Wax's driving needs for a few years, which is
That
still
happens
just
after Stormlight 5.
Yeah.
So, he could be popping back and forth. We don't know.
I am firmly in the camp of Roshar is not going to be a place you can pop back and forth after this book. No matter what happens,
We
for
have
good or for
textual
ill.
evidence for that.
In Lost Metal, right?
Lost Metal. Just finished my reread of that series.
Yeah.
They bring it up.
Should we move on to Navani?
Yeah, Jason, go ahead and pull up that quote though, because it's not happy for poor Roshar.
Sure thing. You guys go ahead. It'll take me a minute to find it.
Yeah. Navani, the Lifespren come to her and check in with her before they go to the rest of the tower?
Yep. That was a new thing. Also the fact that she can't leave the tower.
Yep.
Which is... Yikes.
Immediately, my brain goes, so the tower is going to go with her? We're going to Eurytheru spaceship this and start moving around?
Oof. I mean, in a way, I liked it because Navani is the character who is the center. She's sort of the matriarch. She's the hearth. I guess if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
So it's like a nice like symbolism of her being the literal hearth, that she's the place that everybody, comes to. And is it in this chapter somewhere Shallan talks about Dalinar and Navani feeling like parents to her? Is that in the last chapter? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when that happens. I think that was a couple of chapters ago-ish, somewhere. But yeah, there's that idea that like they are the most positive
Right.
parental figures she's ever had.
Yeah, so I did like that aspect, but I was just it made me feel a bit claustrophobic, where I was like, just being told you can never leave a place is going to immediately make you want to leave that place.
She can go there. She can leave for like weeks. Like she said, what is it, a week or two?
She can take a vacation to the Pure Lake if she needs to.
That's still kind of stressful, though.
It is. Mm-hmm. It absolutely is.
Kind of a Rapunzel situation with a little bit more autonomy in there. I did find the quote from Lost Metal. It's chapter 39 here. Moonlight, the woman said after a glance. You have to read this. Travel to Bajendal has been completely upset. That's 4 primary systems we can't visit without extreme danger, if you count Roshar. That's all, but it's kind of ambiguous even still there, if you count Roshar.
Well, and then even near there's comments about like gods wandering through Shadesmar looking to kill you if you're wandering around in Shadesmar. I always kind of took that as a reference to Odium or War or whoever around Roshar as well. It's not a good time. Not a good time if you want to visit Roshar.
Nope.
And I'm assuming Taldane, Sel, whatever that third one was, and then Roshar. Those are the 4 primary systems I would think they're talking about. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Sel's kind of a given, personally. So I imagine it's something else, especially because it's an Elantrian telling us this.
Yeah, maybe. If you're talking to the Ghostbloods... But I mean, it's 2 Elantrians talking, or 2 Selish people talking to each other there, right? That's code names are stupid or something. I hadn't thought about the hearth analogy there, Shayndl, but I do. I really like the idea that Navani is able to create this home that everyone can rely upon and come back to. You know that you're safe here, no matter what. There's something beautiful about that, like the tower light being able to protect you and infuse you here, and you might have to leave, but you can always come back to the tower.
Yeah, I would say like Navani's the most like mothering figure in the Cosmere, and so this idea of, and that's sort of when you think of like a maternal figure, you think of the home, you think of like the hearth, and so I did think that was a nice little symbolism there. But she does kind of say she feels inhibited by it. She says she tried not to feel inhibited by it. So, sorry about that one. But also, like,
I was just going to say, we have like some vaguely armor spren looking descriptions of spren of a half dozen varieties followed like a cloak made of light. It's like... Is a Navani armor spren made up of a bunch of different kinds of spren? That would be really cool. Like different maybe abilities for the different aspects or something. I don't know.
I wonder if it's just because the sibling seems to be like also the represent. Okay, what just came to my mind was the Lorax.
I speak for the spren. For the spren have no tongues.
So I'm like, so I think like that's this. Maybe it's just that the sibling, that she's merged with the sibling now, because it seems like she doesn't need sleep. The sibling tells her.
Yeah, I guess if you're always full of tower light and it's a calming influence, you wouldn't need it.
Yeah. Yep. I think this is Brandon like putting himself into this. Brandon like also talks about how he doesn't sleep.
Oh, sure. That's funny. Think of what she can accomplish, Bag of Pudding says. Absolutely. I love that that's her first thought. She was like, I could do so much more research.
Huh.
I think it's fascinating
That's
that
the-
humans can't hold her light, that we are too full of holes. So interesting.
Yeah, I also noticed that. I was like, I don't know what that is. Also, that the sibling spies on everybody in the tower.
You're inside of me. What do you mean privacy?
Right.
It's brilliant.
Nobody's like, we need to talk about this. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It,
And then
it reminds me
immediately
of
is helped by it.
it seems like a Spren thing. They don't really understand privacy because both Pattern and Syl are the same way. They're like, what? Who cares? And Shallan and Kaladin are both horrified.
Yeah. And then they build cities with walls and rooms and doors. So obviously privacy is a concept. It's just for the humans it's not, I guess. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, you know. I guess. If the
I see
Spren view humans as like pets, then like I guess.
Yeah, I was just getting there. I was like, what is privacy for a rabbit? What are you talking about? Why would a rabbit need privacy?
Exactly. No.
No, I was thinking that it's more they want to imitate humans.
Oh, see it all?
Especially Radiant Spren. They kind of crave that connection to the physical realm, and if they're like, oh, well, humans build houses with walls and rooms, we got to do that too.
Yeah.
Keep up with the Joneses over there in the other realm.
Well, you got to have your clothes so that, you
Yeah.
can look like a human and all that fun stuff.
Could be also they just feel they have privacy for different things. The things that we would find, what we want to be private, they don't care, but they have other things that they would want to keep private. So
Yeah. This is somewhat unrelated. I was talking to someone the other day, and they brought up that it's kind of strange that Radiant Spren take human form instead of, like, listener and singer form, because they've been around long before the people arrived, I would assume, unless they were a creation of after their arrival. I don't know.
Well, it gets really weird because we know that Leshwi knew Honor Spren, right? Because Leshwi goes, oh, I'm going to use names, but like, is your Spren a friend of Tom? Like, do they know Tom? Because me and Tom go way back. Like, we used to hang out back in the day. So they presumably were around when the listeners were and the singers were interacting with the Spren. But then all of these modern Spren are post-Recreance Spren, right? Because they don't remember the time before the Recreance. The Honor Spren specifically, except for Syl, she predates the Recreance. And Ba'aram Ishram is very singer, right? She's a female singer form. So I would bet that some of the Radiant Spren were singer-based at one point and then made a shift when they realized how much juicier the humans were to interact with.
right. I mean, not all of the Spren manifest in human form, like have human forms. So I don't know. It seems like the Honor Spren are the most close to human, but I don't know if I don't know if all of them are.
I mean, Wendell, Pattern, they both are very like, I have a symbol for a head. I have plant for head kind of thing.
Right. So
that would be funny if we eventually talk to the cryptics and they're like, we don't look like humans. What are you talking about? We're based off of the singers. The patterns are like the rhythms that form our particular carapace helmets or something. I don't know.
That would be interesting.
Ooh. The siblings' parsing of the difference between modern Fabrials and old Fabrials was very interesting to me because it's like, oh, we trapped unwilling ones now and you trapped willing ones? Like, what do you mean willing Spren that just sit in a Fabrial for forever? I don't know. It didn't seem like that much of a distinction in my mind.
When did she? Who says that?
Navani and the sibling. It says one thing still divided Navani and the sibling, who disapproved of modern fabrials. The Spren worried Navani would take what she learned and create more abominations. Modern fabrials required trapping Spren against their wishes. The archaic versions, like the ones that ran the tower, used willing Spren, but they were inefficient in so many ways. Towards the end of Navani's section.
Right, I see it. Yeah, I mean, maybe they're the Spren that are running the tower are like they're not trapped, or they're
somehow they chose that position, I guess, or they. But if they're not sapient, like how do you have willing and willing cattle, right? Like that just it gets very weird very fast.
Well, I guess you have willing and unwilling horses. You know, like there are some horses that are, so.
Makes sense. Let's see.
And then if we look at like oath gates, right? Some of the oath gates want to not work anymore, really, or have more of a say in who they let through. So, like, how willing are they to maintain their form at this point? What would happen if a soulcaster, for example, is just like, you know what? I think I'm done with this. Is there precedent for that? I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. It seems like once you join in, you're kind of stuck in that position, which is weird. I'll have to think about that. Because why did the Oath Gates need to be enlightened to be able to change, right? Shouldn't they just be able to go back to being ink Spren?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think we have nearly enough data to really even be able to figure out what's going on there.
We have enough to wildly speculate, though. Here we go.
From an insanely mechanical and technical section to Queen Fen and Ymakal hanging out in the hammocks.
Yep.
Kamakal, there we go.
This was a weird one for me. I'm not gonna lie.
All I could think about in this section and then Adolin and Shallan's later is my poor little homeschooled, like, middle schooler person that I'm like, I don't know what your parents are going to do with these, like, random 3 paragraphs that might cause problems.
Yeah, I would say that this is why I would say that, like, Stormlight Archive, I call it adult, even if it's not, like, it's still adult, but everybody make their own decisions. But like, yeah, it was kind of fun. I didn't like mind it that much. I just thought it was funny. Also, I laughed because I was like, oh, she's 70. Like they literally called, because we were just talking about this last week. And I was like, well, that answers that question. But yeah, so that was pretty funny. I mean, I thought it was kind of cute. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they were adorable. I think it's just the most precious sex scene that I've ever read in any fiction. Like it's just they're just precious and adorable, and they're like, whatever, General, like tell us what we got to do. Yeah, I'm naked. Like okay, like let's do business. Let's move on.
That was the part where I was like, oh, okay, now I'm just cringing, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. But Jason, we were talking last week about the like ages of the leaders of Roshar, because you've got just not that many 70 to 80-year-olds running around. Though it looks like here for Thaylen they've got the 70-year-old queen, and then they've got an 80-year-old council. But everywhere else it's like 40s and 50s, it feels like, which is just so young relative to other places.
Yeah, this chapter was kind of nice, to be honest. It's a side of the universe we don't see very much. It's nice to know that they are still human, really. It makes sense. I have to reread it because I was just kind of on the back foot. Like, this much nudity in my Sanderson book?
Right?
What is this, Warbreaker? Honeymoon Brandon?
Yep.
I mean, I read ACOTAR this year, so I was like, this is...
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, I remember when Oathbringer was released, that Brandon said that he got simultaneously complaints from people saying, why don't you have more of this? Like, this is not how human beings interact. And at the same day, he had people saying, like, if you continue to put this much content in your books, like, we're not reading it anymore. He was like, I can't win. So I was thinking about, like, well, there are a lot of people that think this is going to be the last time they read Stormlight, but oh well. What can we do?
Yeah, it is.
And this scene is nothing compared to the next one we're going to get, so.
I do. Dusty Regalia says, truly scandalous. At least keep a fingerless glove on. I did think it was hilarious when you have just this naked woman put a glove on her safe hand. She's like, is this better? No, it really, really does not help.
I thought that was funny. I was just going to point that out also. That was funny. And she's like having a ball. She's just having the time of her life.
Yep. Which, I mean, really brings the mood down almost immediately, right? Where they're like, and there's an invasion force. And our blockade is gone because over, 200 skybreakers? Gosh.
Yep.
Hundreds, whatever that means. That seems like at least 3, right? Because otherwise you would say a couple hundred. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm finding skybreakers and their ideologies increasingly problematic as this goes on.
That's one way to put it. Okay, so what are the two? Because it seems like there's a bunch of things happening. It says we have the skybreakers are invading through. That's Yakoved. That's the. Where's that happening?
Okay, wait.
I did, like, I was reading it so fast that I was kind of like, okay, I know all this stuff is happening, but it's sort of like, I need to, like, concretize it a little bit.
Yes. So they had a blockade of Yakoved, and then separately they're being told about, let me see if I get my map up.
Because it seems like every POV that we get, they're getting new information, and I'm just trying to figure out, is this all the same information, or are we getting different things happening?
Yeah, because it's 3 fronts, right? There's the amphibious assault on Thalena. There is the Oathgate into Azimir, and then a force entirely of fused and 2 thunderclassed, I think, on the way to Narak on the Shattered Plains.
Yes. Let's see if this. So Thalen is being attacked. They hear that towards the end, and then there's like a Vaden blockade, which I guess was like up here somewhere, like preventing resources from getting to Yakoved. And that's what the Skybreakers destroyed. And that's completely separate from Azimir, which is further to the west, which is where Yakoved is destroyed. And that's completely separate from Azimir, which is further to the west, which is where Sorry about that. But yeah, so you've got Azimir, you've got Thalen, you've got Yakoved, blockade that's been gotten rid of, and then further to the east, you've got the Stormlands, the Shattered Plains with, which I'm glad they clarified, because the version that we got, Jason, says thousands of fused, not 1,000 fused. I don't know if you caught that difference.
I did not catch that difference.
Yes, it has been clarified in the publishing version to 1,000 fused. The original version said a few thousand, and that was terrifying.
Yeah, I was like, that's possible? What?
Yeah. Because we're not even, at that point, we're not talking about like generic people. We're talking about heavenly ones. We're talking about all of the, that's like 1,000 radiants functionally.
Yeah.
And the thing points out both thunderclasts. So presumably there are only 2 that they have access to or that we know about.
I think we had confirmation of that before. I feel like I remember hearing that somewhere before. That there were only 2.
I
I
have no
guess that
memory.
means there would have had to have been three, because the one that Zeth killed is just gone, gone.
Mm. Is it gone, gone? Is that how that works?
It is
Definitely.
gone, gone. That
Oh,
is, yeah. I could pull up Coppermind and Wobbs about it, but
interesting. That makes
yeah, that
sense.
Thunderclass is just gone.
This is a bit of a side tangent, but are thunderclasts just fused that are somehow able to fuse into those structures? What do y'all think about what thunderclasts are?
No idea. This is one of those things that I always forget are even around. Because it seems so like not like it seems like very different from everything else in Stormlight. So I always forget that they're a thing.
Yeah, I have an idea. So they are described as having the heads of chasm fiends, or something similar to that effect, and some art that's been released as part of the RPG goes along with that. In the prelude to the Stormlight Archive, we see three different colors of blood on the battlefield. We see orange singer blood, red blood of humans, and purple blood. The only things that we've seen to have that color of blood specifically are chasm fiends. And we also have recently learned that they are more intelligent than we first thought in not Warbreaker, Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. So I think that these are just two chasm fiends that were on Odium's side at the time that he was making
Mm.
Fused. And he's like, hey, I got an offer for you. Problem is, a fuse needs a host, a living host to inhabit. And there aren't that many chasm fiends to begin with, let alone willing chasm fiends that would let their bodies be hijacked by a fused equivalent. So I think that they are the fusedified versions of a chasm fiend's soul allowed to inhabit the stone and walk again.
Hmm. Yeah, it's. I also, as an aside, want to know, and I agree that modern day fused need a willing host. I've been trying to figure out what the old way of doing it pre Everstorm was. Whether it was just a high storm or because it says that the pursuer comes back the old way, right? I
Mm.
want to know what the old way was and what it involved.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know. Maybe the same way as the heralds, but we don't even really know how that works mechanically. I think their bodies are just made out of investiture, kind of like how honor blades are formed directly from spiritual realm investiture every time they're summoned.
All right. So let's see. Anything? We got Yanagan, who was sleeping. I love that. He had to be sleeping. Of course he was sleeping. Poor guy.
Right. I also love that they like everything is on a schedule
Mm-hmm.
and is in like. Oh, that was funny.
Are his honor blades or shard blades coming back? Is that Chekhov's shard blade armory from this chapter? He talks about having access in theory to so many shard blades. And I really appreciate
I don't know.
that they
I don't know.
use their shard blades for civil work. Like Dalinar back in Way of Kings is thinking, why has no one ever thought to cut trenches with these things? This is amazing. And it turns out they are. You just don't know about it because you're in Alethkar and no one wants to hear about such things. Also, a little prayer to Yezrian, which is very sad because he's off, captured in a gemstone by Moash.
Yep.
I think that's it for chapter 14 for me. Any other thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I didn't have too much to think about with Yanagan. I think it was just sort of
He's cute.
We have to see what all of the, yeah, he's cute. It's sort of just like all of the monarchs and what they're doing. And so he gets included in that. But I did like the whole, like, he must be sleeping because an emperor would not lie awake and stare at the ceiling, which is so Makawaki. It's just so funny.
Yes. All right, we get another epigraph. This family did not speak my language, but we could both write glyphs, which proved facilitative in our conversation. As I shared their kindly cook fire, I learned some of their story. I love Way of Kings. I love Noadon. I love the way that he communicates information that's like simple and concrete, and then it branches out into all the different meanings.
Yep.
Thing, I'm with you. I love the idea that Noadon is still alive, cracking around somewhere, doing stuff. I think that would be great. That's my crackpot Wind and Truth author. It's Noadon who comes back around to write it out for us.
That would be very symbolic,
right?
With the like bringing things all the way around. I don't know. I'm tired of trying to figure that out.
Right. Roshar is a better place because now it has showers.
I know. I did like that. That was pretty fun. And also that like for Adolin, who's this prince, and like the most luxurious thing he's ever experienced is a shower, which is pretty funny.
Yes. And he's treated himself to all the luxuries of Roshar. He talks about the Thaylen sauna, right? So he definitely knows all of Roshar's possibilities for such things.
Yep.
Potential little like lines to watch for that scare me a little bit. Even stone gave way eventually before rainwater. Given that we have the Everstorm and Night of Sorrows and like really bad things that can happen, and Roshar is mostly rock, maybe not great for the stone to give way to rainwater. Like that metaphorically would not be great for our people. Ugh.
I also thought it was funny that Shallan didn't enjoy it. She was like, "This is awful." Which was pretty funny. Listen,
well, once she turned the pressure down and the heat up, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm with Adolin. I like the hard pressure, but in terms of like bag of pudding, Adolin, his hair care routine must just be,
There's
I'm
a
sure.
special soap that they use with their eyebrows. That's just wonderful for hair.
Because Shallan's always saying, she's like, how does it just, how is it always perfectly messy? And I'm like, Adolin has the most remarkable hair care routine. Is my theory.
Yes. Oh, 100%. There's no way. There's no way he doesn't. His person knew to bring him 6 different soaps. That was not a request that Adolin made. Hakandar was like, oh, a shower? Okay, I know what Adolin's going to need. Let's hook him up. Let's get him. It's just,
It's so funny. It harkens back to the like him needing cologne in prison,
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of my favorite of all time Adolin moments.
Yes. Oh, and him getting to be happy here before we talk about all like the scary theory things that come up for Adolin. Not merely skin to skin, soul to soul. Like this is what he'd always wanted and had never been able to find until he met her.
Aww.
And it's not delusional either. It's not the like when Kaladin looks at her and she smiled anyway, but he doesn't realize how that's just the act.
Yeah.
This is like him and Shallan knowing each other and him knowing about Formless and the Ghost Bloods and the fact that Shallan kept a huge secret from the entire Alethi family for over a year and a half. I don't ever think about that year gap between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War when I think about how long she kept that secret. But it includes that year gap. Oh.
Yeah,
We've
it's
got
amazing that Adolin still trusts her, to be honest. But
we've got a comment here from Thing. Shallan equals pregnant.
that is my theory. I do kind of think that, at least in the back half, we will come back to them and find Shallan and Adolin with like a whole bunch of little kids running around.
Hopefully. I mean, for that to happen, Adolin would have to be real. So.
Would he? Wouldn't a substantiated Adolin also be capable
I
of...
don't even want to think about that, my friend.
No, we're not even going to go there. I have a feeling, yeah, I know. We're not even going there. Okay. But yeah, it's such a sweet little moment. It reminds me a lot of the scene in Rhythm of War, right before the trial. There's like another really sweet, like Shallan and Adolin moment, which is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was parsing that because I was like, well, it can't be... It has to be before the trial starts, because before the trial's last day is when she's going full formless. It is like, all right, see you later, Adolin.
It's right before she goes and she like wakes up the next morning and she's formless. It's the scene right before that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and this reminded me of this one. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we get into the whole Dalinar thing now?
I think so.
I'm afraid. No. Okay, so I guess let me start here for a second.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna lay it all out. First of all, Gary from Cosmere Junkie messaged me like last week on Monday, and he was like, "What do you think of this?" So here's my thing. I do not think that this is a sign that Adolin is going to join the other side. I really, really don't, and I'm not just saying that because I have an unhealthy attachment to Adolin. I really think that it's. I want to see, this is exactly what I want to see. I want to see a clash between Dalinar and Adolin. Mm-hmm. I want to see them have it out. I want them to disagree. I want them to go through that. I just don't see this as a sign of Adolin gonna completely switch characters. It makes sense that he would be angry at his father. It would be weird if he found out what he did about Dalinar and his mother, and he's like, well, that's okay. Like, no, I want him to go through these emotions. I want them to have it out. And so I think that that's what they're doing here. Even in like Rhythm of War, he says to Shallan, like, I respect him, but I'm just so angry about him. I can't stand being in the same room as him. And so this feels like a natural progression. It doesn't feel like, okay, now he's evil. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I know I know this is a fan favorite theory, but I really don't see it. So,
oh man.
That being said, I have a feeling I'm about to get my heart broken. So.
Well, I also don't I could see the timeline where Adolin resents Dalinar enough, but I don't see a timeline where that happens in 8 days.
Yeah.
So.
And also, like.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
No, I talked forever. Go ahead. I'll say my. I'll get back on my soapbox in a minute.
Yeah, part of the problem is it's a really pivotal 8 days. There's a lot of opportunities for Dalinar to do things that Adolin won't like. There's not a lot of time for them to actually sit down and talk, right? Like, this isn't the time where someone can go up to Dalinar and say, hey, let's have a sit-down father-son chat real quick. So I could see a lot of this unspoken stuff not getting spoken. I mean, even in this moment, he's like, yeah, Shallan, I get it. I, too, would want somebody to go talk to my dad for me. It's actually kind of the reverse back in Rhythm of War when he learns from Kaladin how to help Shallan. He's like saying, hey, this is the thing that I need. I need someone to help me talk to my dad. It's not going to happen if it's just me. And yeah, his parallel also of, honestly, I don't want to think about him or talk to him. I don't want to fix things between us. That has a little bit of the Moash feel to it, right? Of like, I just want to not feel this way about him. I don't think he's there yet, but I could see a world where he says, hey, take this away from me. I don't want to feel that anymore.
I don't think that's what he's saying. I think that he says, I don't want to fix things between us. I think that's a really like very human reaction to when you are really, really in a very intense emotional state, and you know when somebody comes to you and they're like, you need to solve this, and you're like, no. And not only that, I'm going to dig my heels in deeper. I think that's where Adolin is right now. I think he's going through the stages of grief. He never properly mourned his mother because there was this lie about her death. And so now he needs to go through that. But I also think that he says, because it says he thought that waiting would let the pain fade. And that's the same kind of thing. It's that's not how human, reaction. It doesn't just go away. He needs to discuss this. He needs to talk it out. But he says instead it had festered, he found himself more angry than it had been when he first found out. So I think it's really interesting. I was saying to Cosmic Junkie, I was like, it would be gut-wrenching if they never talked it out, and then Dalinar dies or becomes a fuse at the end of this book, and Adolin is left with this like crushing guilt that he never got that closure with his father, which could be one way this is going. I really hope they do have some sort of something. It seems like this has come up enough that it's going to be a thing, whatever it is. That they're gonna have to talk this out or yell it out or fight it out or something. I just don't think that this means, again, I don't think my frustration with this theory that Adolin being evil is that every time a Stormlight book comes out, this theory comes around, and it's mostly because like he one time killed a guy who really deserved to die. I just don't I don't know.
Yeah, when I've heard the theory about Adolin being like an Odium champion, I haven't heard that he's evil per se, because I think there's a timeline where someone is Odium's champion but also not evil, right? They just align with what he's saying. Because Odium himself, if you asked Odium, are you evil? No. I am doing what I think is best for the planet. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm kind of falling off.
I'll give you that point. I'll revise my statement. I don't think that Adolin, having spent the entire rhythm of war all about being honorable and recruiting the honor sprint, to then in a few days be like, because I'm angry at my father, I'm now going to give up everything that I've worked for and give up my family. And like, it just doesn't seem that that's Adolin. There's not like, he has issues with anger. We know that, like, he gets angry, and it makes sense that he would be angry at Dalinar.
Of course.
So, that to me seems like this is where we're going. I know. When I read it, I was like, oh, here we go.
I agree with you. I completely agree. I don't think 8 days is enough for Adolin to decide, you know what, I will be this champion because my dad needs to be stopped. I don't think 8 days is enough time for that change to be made, personally.
So my head was in my hands because of nothing that was said, ironically, but it was because as you were talking, Jason and Shayndl, my brain made this connection that this is a duel. And like the first thing we learn about Adolin is that he wants to be in duels, and his dad won't let him be in duels during a time of war. And I don't know that that means that it's going to be Adolin for Odium or whatever, but it does seem very thematic that Adolin, the duelist, would end up in the most important duel in the first 5 books of the Stormlight Archive, whether as Honor's champion or Odium's champion. So
I just think that, honestly, like, the better arc for him is to work through it rather than, because I mean, that's sort of, okay, we have Moash for that, a little bit, but I think just I understand why people go that way. I understand why people think that that might be where Adolin is going. I just think that it would be a much better arc to see him, because we've seen, like, Adolin is going through the same thing that we're going through, right? The deconstruction of Dalinar in his mind. And so then he has to come to terms with that. But at the same time, it's laced with so much pain because he thought that his mother was murdered by these, towns, like these, this other town. And then to find out that, like, no, actually his father was responsible for it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's much more interesting to have him have to work through that than just to be like, well, he's going to switch sides, even though that's, coming out of nowhere, it feels like.
Here's my pitch then. He tricks Odium into letting him become the champion so that he can then have an anti-Stormlight investiture blade and then defeat Dalinar, but kill him with a blade that then results in no cognitive shadow, because the worst thing that could happen for the universe is Dalinar fused, conquering the Cosmere for Odium. That would be, the Blackthorn willingly on Odium's side would be terrifying. And they have their father-son conversation mid-duel. And it ends with him killing his own father.
Are you trying to make me angry?
I'm just saying, there's pieces there. There's building blocks. You could get there.
I don't think... I'm not going to say that Adolin is not smart enough. I'm just saying that Adolin doesn't think that way. I don't think that he, I don't think that that's how he thinks. He's not a strategist in that way.
That is a good response.
I did notice that.
That is very fair. Jason, talk about what... I had not noticed that, because I don't pay attention to visuals ever, because I'm the worst. What are we talking about? The thing points out something about the chapter headings.
Yeah, so chapter headings. At the start of our chapter, there's the arch with the different heralds, I believe, depending on the
usually,
chapter.
Sometimes it's wit, but yeah.
Yeah. And in the past, they have been mostly intact, a couple cracks. But in these chapters, the cracks are getting bigger, which I did notice when I was reading, but I just thought that they had always been that way. Like, I actually stopped and those cracks are quite pronounced. That's interesting. And then just moved on. I don't really know what this could symbolize aside from the end is near.
So that's interesting. It looks like chapter 4 has a little crack next to Hoyd, because he's the dude with the mask.
Yeah, I think it's symbolizing sort of, we're coming to the end. There's the cracks in the armor, I guess.
I did not.
I almost think it's like in Tress of the Emerald Sea, where every chapter the Aether grows a bit more. So perhaps as the book continues, they'll become more and more broken.
Yeah, you're right, Thing. There's just that little crack above one of the, like, it's in the same spot every time, above the Herald's face. And then all of a sudden, just cracks everywhere. I mean,
it's a really cool detail. I hadn't noticed it. To be honest.
I had not. It's a curse of the audiobook reader. I've never paid attention to that, and my brain cannot keep track of who is who within the icon. Even though there's only 11 of them, it's Hoyd and the 10 heralds. But I can never remember which one is which one, and so I just let Coppermind tell me if something's significance there. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's really interesting.
That is really cool.
I would predict then that by day 10, it'll either, like, I think we're going to get like a curve. Like, it's going to get way worse, and then maybe by the end of the book, it'll be restored? Question mark? I could see that.
Or we get a new one for the back half.
Right?
Ooh.
I am sad we didn't get any, this is going back a little bit, but any Sleepless in the not asleep chapters. I think that would have been really cute to be like, and the Sleepless blah, 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 was not asleep.
That's funny. Another thing that I noticed in this chapter that Shallan brings up that Mraize will possibly go after Adolin, which I hadn't considered.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a Chekhov's gun, Chekhov's Adolin, to me.
You say
Especially since
he's going to check off Adolin from the list of people to kill?
Yeah, especially since we don't quite know what Adolin's going to be doing this book. At least I don't, because I haven't read ahead. But
for what it's worth,
like
I don't either.
Okay.
I do because they released the blurb on the back of the book.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's actually what he's going to be doing. I think that that's I think that's a misdirect.
Okay.
So, but it could be. It could be that it's just kind of straightforward. I tend to think it's a bit of a misdirect. I think it's a bit of a misdirect. Same way I think that Kaladin's is a bit of a misdirect too.
Alrighty.
Let's see. I mean, so to cap off the Adolin conversation, I mean, they do bring Passion Spren in, and Passion is Odium's moniker that he's picked out. So I think we at least have to acknowledge that that's happening there.
I mean, because no other characters have ever shown any passion in the Stormlight Archives.
What other Spren would appear in that situation? Come on.
Literally, they're in a shower together. I mean, like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Are there sexy Spren?
No, we are not going there.
Let's see. So we can shift to Dalinar. Dalinar's running around. He's trying to meet with everybody. I had weird vibes about this Kolot guy. I just don't trust somebody that's been bouncing around between positions for a few years. I don't know what that means. It was very odd to suddenly be describing this third-person character and giving him so much information. I was like, is he a spy? Is he a Khandra? What's going on? Who is this?
I mean, his description sounds pretty Veden, but the sort of with the red hair mixed with black. His name has like the but it is a lot of description for a character that is very minor that I don't think we've ever heard of before, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, not that I can find. I don't think he even has a. See if he has a Coppermind entry.
Of course he does.
Yeah, I mean he was a squire.
Okay, the way that they describe his eyes is very weird. They say dark enough that they were visible only in direct light, which is like kind of a cool description. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, it is odd. Yeah, Thing is pointing out, Gavinor's, you promised to play swords with me, which again, going back to the weird theory stuff, a duel is playing swords with me. So I'm just saying, if he's promised to play swords with him, Gavinor is champion. It's getting some stocks going up.
I think this is just Brandon trolling everybody.
I actually had not thought about how clever it would be to take the promise to play swords with me into the champion theory until this exact moment. But that's funny.
I hope not, man. Poor Gav. He needs a break.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's where this is going. I think we're setting up. I think Gavinor is going to be super important in the back half.
Yeah.
And I think we're just setting up a really unhappy child. It's giving me a lot. I don't know if I want to spoil Red Rising, but there's a character in Red Rising that it's giving me very like similar vibes.
Does that person start with an L?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
But yeah, it is just very sad. And it's like also that he's like he doesn't sleep, and then it says that Gav buried his face in her hava but peeked at Dalinar. The boy's eyes were red from tears. It's just so sad. Like, it's just so horrible.
Terrorized by the fused. Not that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had a year to recover, but it's just, I mean, relative to childhood trauma, that's basically nothing. Statistically, he's basically guaranteed to be wrecked. I mean, just the way.
I know, and I'm kind of thinking that we're gonna see him kind of get a spren. He's gonna be like Yasna's protege, which will be really cute in the back half.
I would love that.
Because he'll be like 16 or 17 or like 15, somewhere around that in the back half, right?
Depending on, they've talked about 10 years. And remember, 10 years is basically 11 years from our perspective. Sorry, I
had somebody
can't talk
comment that
about it.
I know. I had somebody comment that again this week, and I was just like, it just works out. Don't think about it. But so like 15, 16, he would already be, starting to take on like some duties probably if he's going to be the future king.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, gosh, where does he even? How does that work from a succession perspective at that point? Because Dalinar talks about like the succession of Alethkar versus Urithiru.
He's Yasna's heir.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. That's fair.
They say that she says that. I think she says like Gavinor will be my heir, with the same way that like Kaladin is going to be Dalinar's heir, potentially.
If he accepts, which he's got the letter, so it seems like he probably will. Thing says until Void gets Yasna pregnant.
Oh no! No. That was a no. That's just, I'm gonna say no.
Yep. This is a small thing. I don't know how I feel about Dalinar thinking of Sigzil, the High Marshal of the Windrunners, as Windrunner Sigzil. Like, give him some more respect. He is the commander, the leader, the chief, the everything. He's not just Windrunner Sigzil.
What does he call Kaladin? High Marshal. Doesn't he call him?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
High Marshal Stormblessed.
Yeah, if he was like Soldier Kaladin walked by, I'd be like, no, that's not Soldier Kaladin. What are you talking about?
I guess old habits die hard.
Yeah, it's fair. But yeah, so a third offensive. This is where the large number of fused comes in. Thaylen City, Azamir, and the Shattered Plains. Which, how great, to thinking of ways in which we're circling back to Way of Kings, that we've got another climactic battle set up for the Shattered Plains. Feels very on point.
Yep.
We also get a rough number of radiants. So we have less than 500 radiants. He says
that feels right.
Yeah, there's 1,000 fused, and I mean, I guess it depends on what he. So it says 1,000 fused. He'd never faced a battle with more than 200. There weren't that many radiants in all of Roshar, not by half. So I assume we're talking about the 1,000, and there aren't that many, not by half. So 400-ish, maybe.
Do we think that this is Taravangian moving all this into place? Or
I think so. That's how I read it.
Right. It's weird. We don't really know how the Fuse responds to a new master.
Sure.
If they know at all. If they know. We also don't really know anything about El.
Right.
And what he's doing.
Seems like something's got to be going on. You don't introduce him, give him all the epigraphs, and then have him disappear.
Yep. And then the last thing we have is this, with cultivation.
That little thing. Yeah.
Little thing.
That was super surprising, and I feel for the people who have to wait a week to find out what that conversation entails. Yeah, jaw on the floor. Just hello. Suddenly there is a deity in here, and nobody seems to realize it until Dalinar's like, "Wait a minute,
I've met this lady before. Don't I not remember meeting you somewhere before?"
That's funny. I mean, I have not read further, so I don't know what's gonna. I presume this is where she tells him, "By the way, I made a big mistake. Sorry," and now the end of the world. Like I keep saying, do not trust cultivation to plan anything. For somebody who cultivates things, she doesn't seem to be all that good at it.
I mean, it just depends on what her plan is, right? If the plan is prevent, and her future sight too, like if the plan is prevent Odium from going out and destroying all of the other shards, maybe this accomplishes that somehow. I don't know. Bag of Pudding, I can confirm that you don't have to wait more than a week for this conversation. I think that's a fair thing to confirm. Because that's going to make you come back faster to read it, and they like that. So
they've also only got to wait, 11 hours?
Oh, that's right. Oh, gosh. Yeah, 12 hours from now, 11 hours from now, give or take. Oh, man.
But yeah, shards and gods doing shenanigans. When Dalinar opened the perpendicularity for the first time, Odium specifically says, "No, that's impossible. We killed you," plural. Now, that could just mean Odium and his forces, but I think that implies that there was another shardic entity involved in the seemingly the death of Honor. And I didn't think it was cultivation at first because they have been confirmed to be romantically involved at one point, Tanavast and Corvalium. But the vessel can warp you, so maybe Honor made an oopsie, opened himself up to attack, and cultivation helped finish him off.
Yeah, I mean, if he'd become so set in his ways, right, that he could no longer, if he was becoming crazy like he's described, maybe she looks at it and says, look, somebody else has to be Honor. Like, this is going to hurt the cosmos, the Cosmere, if this continues. I don't know.
I could absolutely see that, because at one point, I forget who it is, but they mentioned that Honor started to care more about the swearing of oaths more than what the oaths represented. It might have been Odium who was talking about this.
Oh, that sounds like a Rhythm of War Odium conversation, yeah.
Yeah, where the oath itself is all that mattered, not the context surrounding it or what the oath does. It's just, you said this, you've got to keep it. And on Roshar, oaths are tied very heavily to personal growth and development as well, at least in the magic system. So if Honor was just stuck in his ways of oaths are all that matters, cultivation might have needed to, as you mentioned, dethrone Honor to maintain her role in everything.
I mean, I'm feeling less and less positive about cultivation, especially after her questionable conversation with Odium. I don't know. She is like what CJ is saying, that she has like a grand plan and it's just sort of, and that's what she's going for, or she is just really naive. So
I sincerely hope it's not naive.
Yeah, I'm not
Because
leaning towards that one.
yeah, especially with her being a dragon and dragons having functional immortality, she's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years before the shattering even happened. And if she's that naive, even now,
I mean, this is what we were talking about last week, but I just don't understand how she could not predict the Taravangian conflict with Odium. And so either she's willing to take that risk because she thinks that he's better than like a smart person at the wheel is still better than a crazy person at the wheel, or he massively misunderstood him or overestimated him. So I don't know. I mean,
it's weird. It is weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at a disadvantage here because I haven't read the conversation that they're going to have.
I don't remember it, so. I have been shocked. I made a little group chat for people who had the NetGalley preview stuff, and they'll say things, and I'm like, "Is that in there? Did that happen? Okay, cool." So
that's what happens if you read ahead, CJ.
That's why I'm purposefully not, because I want to, as much as possible, be in the like week to week mindset, and I just like some vague memories of a vision I had at one point. Yeah, I can almost envision like a new naivete that comes from having not been mortal for so long that maybe she can't process how short-sighted he'll be. Like, almost like that's what's happening. She's had such a long view for so long, and she's prepared him to be able to see things intellectually and emotionally separately, that it's almost like this opposite of naivete. Like she's forgotten what it is to be mortal and to suddenly have access to a shard's power. Something like
the
that.
Conversation between her, the conversation between her and Odium is so bizarre. The more that I think about it, I just can't figure out what's really going on there, because she does turn really quickly, and and then Odium thinks she's going to work against me now. And it's like, how do you know that? Like, it just seems like there's so much there. I feel like I have to go back and reread that now. But so I don't know. I feel like tomorrow will answer some questions for me, but I'm sure it'll just create a whole new host of new questions. So.
yeah.
Bag of Pudding makes a good comment. She's been around as long as Odium, so why are we so sure that she's the sane one?
That's a very good point. Although cultivation would probably, the shard of cultivation would, well, I mean, none of the shards are particularly sane, but it seems that she's a little bit more stable, but maybe not.
Yeah, I guess just because no one in text has been claiming that she's lacked sanity, and Reyes has appeared to lack composure and sanity, right? When we got his interludes, when we got scenes with him, he seemed to be unraveling more and more and more as his plans unraveled. And maybe that's like a comment on the life that he's lived. He's lived a time as a shard destroying other shards. Maybe that has left some, fractures on his own soul from having engaged in that destructive capacity. I don't know.
I wonder, tell me if this is something that's been discussed. I wonder how the different intents latched onto the different people. Meaning that, did Ati, was he that kind of person who would seek to destroy things, and so therefore the shard of ruin attached to him? And so maybe race, because Wit says he's a megalomaniac. Well, that goes pretty well with Odium. So is it that, and we know that they start to blend together. We know that the intent of the shard starts to take over. But I wonder how did it happen when Adonalsium is split apart? Was it just random, or was it intentional?
I do have some additional information on that. I just need to find the quote. So it seems like it was kind of half and half. There were people that wanted a certain shard, and then others were given a shard because they thought they'd be able to control its intent better. And I think AT was on the protect side of things. I just need to find the quote where they mentioned that he was a calm and friendly person before taking the shard.
Yeah, it's in one of the epigraphs when they're writing back and forth. Um, is it Rhythm of War? Is that how late that is? No.
Oh, I
See,
mean,
Way of Kings, chapter 18, epigraph, or general Twitter Q&A. Let's go with the in-text citation.
Yeah.
A.T. was once a kind and generous man, and you saw what became of him. Ray's, on the other hand, was among the most loathsome, crafty, and dangerous individuals I have ever met. And that's from the letter between Hoyt and Frost.
Yeah. So it seems like A.T. picked up Ruin as a way to try to curb some of the worst aspects of Ruin.
well, I mean, in Mistborn, it's pretty clear that Ruin is not, like, again, not evil, right? That just something being ruined is not necessarily a bad thing. But he then kind of takes it. He lets the intent just kind of rule him.
I mean, it would not. Yes. I mean, you could not have stories without Ruin, right? Like the end of a story is ruinous. Like it definitionally ends the existence of something. Like
and also that preservation is right, and that preservation is not good necessarily. It's not creation. It's just keeping things status quo, which, as you see in Mistborn, is not a great thing. So, yeah, exactly. But it does seem that Odium, the shard of Odium, the intent is just. It does seem like it's a little bit more evil.
Yes.
It does. It's not really matter who's at the wheel. It's just sort of,
Well, okay, now hold on. In defense of Odium, it also is what drives him to feel the pain of every dying child in the Cosmere. And that isn't evil, right? That just is reality.
Right, but then he immediately, again, going back to that conversation we had last week, because, okay, well, there's a really easy way to stop it. And he's just like, no. Like, so that's where it gets, but is that Taravangian or is that the shard?
Yeah. Well, and is the goal to become the only shard so that everyone now is his and he can then create the society that he wants, right?
I mean, I don't think that any of the shards are like good or evil. All of them are pretty neutral, right? Passion could be a good thing, could be bad. Like it's not Ruin, and we talked about this with Ruin and Preservation. Neither of those are like evil things, right? It's not like he's the god of, mass murder or something. But
he's not Daladar.
No. It does seem that Odium, like it seems like it takes Taravangian 0.5 seconds to full on, he's just right back where we started. There's not a lot of so I don't know if it's just that the Odium is so powerful that it just kind of swallows up whoever is holding it. I don't know.
That's going to be an interesting piece if we eventually do get a real understanding of what does it mean to be the Shard of Odium? Like, is it the definition of odium, which is like hatred, anger, divorced from justice and compassion,
mercy,
or divorced from mercy, right? Literally, odium and mercy being separated from each other, or is it this passion thing that Ray's was championing for? I don't know. Hoyt and Frost certainly seem to think it's hatred, not passion.
Yeah. It almost seems to me like Dominion would be a better intent to align with what Taravangian wants.
Sure.
He wants control over everything.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but that's Taravangian's whole thing, is that he sometimes is very emotional, sometimes he's very analytical. So I guess that was, going back to cultivation, that was her plan, right? Was like, have somebody with the capacity for both intellect and emotion, and then give him this power, and hopefully he'll do something good with it. If that's her plan, it didn't go well, but if it's not her plan, then okay. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm still not totally clear on Taravangian and what his plan is and what I don't know. There's something going on there that I'm not fully like, I think, understanding. So
Yeah, to me, that's the perfect test of Taravangian's ethics, is when he was just trying to protect like a little city, he was doing whatever. Now he gets Zeth. Let's kill all of the leaders. We've got to, but he keeps saying, I've got to protect, I got to protect. And now he has a way to go to Dalinar and go to the Fused and be like, hey, ceasefire. Like, we don't need to be killing each other right now. Let's figure out what we want to do next. And he doesn't. And immediately, the ethics are out the window.
That was my point, was that like, he's like, I want to save every child. And she's like, okay. And he's like, but not that way. So that's where I don't really know what's going on. That whole little conversation in there is just throwing me a bit. So we shall see.
Indeed we shall. I have to get going. It has been so fun. I hope to show up next week as well.
Yeah.
I love it as always. Thank you, Jason, for joining us.
You're welcome. All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, I don't know how much we have left to discuss, but because we kind of went through everything, unless there's anything else.
I was going to look. I want to know. I think there are going to be people who read this chapter and like 1,000. Maybe that's not quite fair. Probably the interlude before, but like I want to know, for the just complete casual, never talks to anybody about the series, reads the books, when they come out. Like, when do you get the whole honor, cultivation, odium, all this stuff that's going on in the background that we just take for granted, right? Like, we just, oh yeah, shards, they're doing things, and shardic influences, and the shattering of Adonalsium 10,000 years ago, and all this stuff. I just want to know, like, from that person's perspective, like, what they're seeing in all of this.
Are there a lot of people like that who are left? I feel like but maybe just because I'm so wrapped up in this like very intense Cosmere space. But I'm wondering at this point, if you are reading Stormlight Archive, then you have to be at least interested in the greater Cosmere, because I mean, Kelsier is name dropped in the last chapter. Like, you can't, be.
I saw some people really mad about that actually online. They were just like ripping their books up metaphorically, and they were just very upset.
Why? Because they don't like that he's like, what would they be upset about?
It was too much of a crossover for them. They want to keep, they're like, you're getting too much peanut butter in my chocolate kind of thing. Like, Mistborn over there, Stormlight over here.
Yeah, I think they need to get over that quickly, really, really fast. I have a feeling, like, I mean, we know that's where it's going. Like, I don't know. That's what we're all waiting for. Like, isn't that, like, that's what I'm doing here. I want to see the big, everybody kind of meeting each other. I'm waiting for that, Yeah.
So. I mean, it is the promised end of the Cosmere, is a space-age Star Wars, Star Trek level conflict between Roshar, Scadrial, and probably Taldane, / Autonomy, whatever she's doing over there. And yes, I think you'll always be able to read the books and enjoy them. But if you are saying, I don't want the Cosmere, then you don't want the Cosmere. That's fine. But like, that is what he's put on the tin.
Yeah, it's sort of like watching the Marvel movies and being like, why is Captain America in my Iron Man movie? Isn't that why you're watching it? Like, I don't know.
Right. And that's the beautiful part about Brandon, is that he's never going to have a phase like the MCU has just had, where people just start appearing for no reason. You're always going to have them appearing for perfectly logical reasons. I mean, Kelsier and Felt were a perfect dovetail. I mean, I read that chapter with Felt and I went, of course he is. Like I knew he was a spy for Straff. I knew that he had come to Roshar, and I should have expected him to be working for Kelsier. Like, it makes perfect sense.
It feels satisfying. For me, like Lost Metal was not my favorite, but I do think like the stuff that was really fun for me was figuring out all the aliases for the Ghost Bloods and being like, oh my gosh, it's Deora and it's Shy, and like seeing them all work together was really fun. Isn't that what we're all doing here? Like, it's just kind of, I love Bag of Pudding. There's too much Cosmere in my Stormlight archive, which is great.
Well, I just did that video today where someone was new to my channel, new to the Cosmere TikTok, and they were like, wait, are these connected? And it's like, yes, those are. And honestly, I need to do Peter Cosmere Considered had a really good welcome to the Cosmere video. Like, I need to do one that's better production and pictures and things. But yeah, it's such a fun concept to introduce people to this star cluster where you've got solar systems that are within walking distance of each other. And yeah, you can have a main character from one book show up and be a side character in another, and show up and be an antagonist in another one. And
I do think, though, that like I'm imagining like those of us who've been enmeshed into Cosmere for a while, somebody comes along and they're like, wait, all these are connected, and we're like, well, there was this god, he split into 16 pieces, and they're like, I'm out. Like, you know, like we get so kind of like what you're talking about. We're like, you know, talking about all these like very theoretical cosmological things, and they're like, who's Wit, who's Hoyd? Okay.
Yeah,
let me start from the beginning.
Yeah, that's why I always ask people, how deep do you want this conversation to go? Like, if you want to hear all the crazy, like, yeah, I can take you to the background radiation of the universe on this. Like, I can go that far back. Want to hear all the crazy, like, yeah, I can take you to the background radiation of the universe on this. Like, I can go that far back. You probably don't want that. You probably just want to know, hey, do you like Ocean's 11? Do you like French Revolutionary War time period? Go read Mistborn. It'll be great. You know, do you like a very philosophically minded, grounded short story? Go read Emperor's Soul. Like, if you like this, you're gonna like other parts of the Cosmere. It's figuring out where to start, not understand the grand web of everything.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I think that we do a disservice to people who want to join the Cosmere when we talk about it being interconnected, because I think people think that it's like the MCU where you have to start at a certain point, and I don't think that the Cosmere is really like that. People always ask me, like, where do I start? And I'm like, you could really start anywhere. I said, you could start with Stormlight Archive, you could start with Mistborn. I said, I think the best thing for you to do is find out what's your taste. So if you really, you know, where to start, like, if you think Mistborn taste-wise is going to be, because I know that Brandon always says start with Mistborn, but honestly, I don't know if it start with Mistborn, and it took me a while to get into Stormlight Archive because Mistborn wasn't the perfect fit for me. If I'd started with Elantris or Warbreaker, I would have been, you know, hooked much faster. But for some people, it's a really great place to start. So I do think we do a bit of a disservice to people wanting to join it, where we kind of overhype the interconnectedness.
I would say even above and beyond the interconnectedness of it, I think we do the bigger disservice by telling people that you have to read this book, or that's the wrong place to start, or hey, you have to stop reading Stormlight Archive and go read Warbreaker right now, and go read all of the Mistborn series before you read Oathbringer or before you read Rhythm of War. It's like, no, you don't. You can if you want to. But that's the funniest thing to me about Sunlit Man is I have met so many people who are medium to upper tier Cosmere people, but not super close readers, that hate it. Because they're like, I didn't understand, and I was frustrated because I thought there was a reference, but I didn't know what it was. And then everybody who just reads it first, they're like, oh, it was a wild Western, man. That was so much fun. Like, that's a wild ride. I can't wait to see more from this author. Then they are going to be reading other books and going, wait, Storms, Damnation, what? This is Nomad, this is awesome. And like, it'll just have their discovery later. It's just different.
Right. I mean, in general, I'm not the kind of person that's like, I'm not looking for all the Easter eggs. I just like to enjoy the story, and then afterwards I'll be like, oh yeah. Like a lot of times on these streams, I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about, cool. Or I have to like look it up afterwards. So I can see. I really liked Sunlit Man.
Yes.
So and I wasn't like super focused on. I thought I was like, oh cool, Scadrial,
Yes.
or Scadrial. I wasn't like trying to figure out what everything was. I wasn't trying to figure out what happened to Kaladin and why do they mention him. It wasn't. I was just like, let me just enjoy the story. So maybe like for me, that's just how it is. The same. Isn't it weird whenever people say you should definitely start here? People recommending Tress, starting with Tress. If I had started with Tress, I wouldn't have kept going. Like it would, I think it really has to be taste. Like it's just not as, I think it's not as interconnected it is, but at the same time, we are getting to a point in the Cosmere where if you haven't read Mistborn and Warbreaker, and now you're trying to read Wind and Truth, you're going to be missing some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's interesting about it is you're missing things that we have, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like you're missing things in Lord of the Rings if you haven't read the Silmarillion, right? Like, you're not going to know the full depth of Eru and the Ainur and the Balrogs and all that stuff that you would if you'd read the Silmarillion, but you also don't need it to enjoy the reference to Iluvatar or whatever. The one I'm thinking of in this book is Sazed and Kelsier being name dropped, right? If you read that either as, I guarantee you there's going to be some not careful readers that don't even grasp that this Sazed is the same Sazed, right? Like they're just reading quickly, Sazed, whatever, and someone goes, that's the same person, right? And they're like, wait, what? How is that possible? And, maybe. I don't know. That one probably less so, because Sazed and Kelsey are very unique names. But if you haven't read those books, it does. But people, like humanity being the experiment that it is, someone who has read Mistborn is going to read straight past that and think, well, that can't be the same person. It must be somebody different. Move on. But even if you haven't read them, you just think, oh, it's somebody important to Hoyd that he knows, and you move on, right? Like it's one of those things where the context adds, but isn't essential yet. I'm sure at some point it'll be essential, but I don't think we've fully gotten there yet. Bag of Pudding. Real quick, sorry.
Oh, no.
Bag of Pudding. I do want to say Warbreaker. No one should clown on you for saying to start with Warbreaker. If you are a person that likes political drama with really cool magic, I think Warbreaker is a great place to start. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's better written than Elantris in my opinion. Though I think Shayndl would say that what Elantris beats all of Era 2 of Mistborn, so maybe we can't go there.
I have a lot of like Sarah J. Maas fans that follow me over on Instagram, and I tell them all to start with Warbreaker because if you want to get into the Cosmere, it's also the most like romance heavy. Mm-hmm. So, I think, I don't know if I would encourage anybody. I really loved Elantris, but I know it's kind of controversial I do think that Mistborn is a good place to start. Yeah, I do think that Mistborn is a good place to start because it is a finished series and it gives you a really good taste for how Brandon structures series. I just think that it's kind of dark. So if for people who are not used to a little bit more grim dark or things, and it's also like flow. So but I just think that it has to be more, taste based than
100%. I think that's totally right. Whenever I hear people talking about where to start with Brandon, the people I respect the most are the ones that focus on what Brandon does, which is what do you like to read? Mm-hmm. And then go from there, right? And then that is the correct place to start with Brandon. Because the worst thing, like you said, is to start with a Tress where you hate the writing style and you hate the voice, and you're like, well, this is what this guy sounds like. I'm never going to read another one of his books.
Right. Well, and also, like, don't worry so much about when you have to read things. I didn't read Right.
So,
And also, like, don't worry so much about when you have to read things. I didn't read Warbreaker, I think, until after I finished Oathbringer. And it's fine. Like, you don't have to worry so much about, oh no, I'm not gonna know that it's fine. Like, just read and enjoy. Worry so much about, oh no, I'm not gonna know that it's fine. Like, just read and enjoy. Mistborn era too. Like, just read whatever you want to read and don't worry about it so much.
yes.
But everybody here knows that already because we're all, you know,
Well, that's
there's
yeah,
nobody here who hasn't read.
yeah, and that's the thing that's so beautiful about it is that he wrote it all knowing he was going to do it. It's not like Isaac Asimov where, you know, he starts connecting the dots later and you have to retcon things. There's not really anything that's needed to be retconned.
Yet.
Yeah. I mean, we have the big one about
I don't
Kaladin
think
and Zeth and all those things, but gosh.
I don't think there will be. I mean, Brandon is such a plotter that, like, you know, I don't think that we will get major like retconning things need to be retconned.
Yeah. Especially post Atium and post Kaladin Zeth. Like everything else has been planned out well enough and he's thought about it to
What's
avoid
the Kaladin
that.
and Zeth thing?
Oh, Words of Radiance? The fight scene at the end?
Why is that a retcon?
So it is not even just a retcon, but it's a publishing. Like they changed it from one publishing version to another. Awesome. So this is in the original. Let me just pull up. Actually, I'm going to go to the internet because that'll make it easier. Words of Radiance, Zeth, Kaladin.
While you're doing that, I'm just gonna address the thing. I keep saying the thing. It's just hard to say thing without a the.
I know, right?
Yeah,
I keep doing that too. I'm sorry, thing.
Yes, I'm also sorry, thing. I didn't like Tress either. I'm so happy to have found a compatriot. Wasn't my favorite. I didn't think it was like god awful. I just
Yeah. So in Words of Radiance, originally, Kaladin stabs Zeth with the shard blade in the chest, hits his spine, which kills him immediately, right? Because of the whole severing the soul from the spine type thing. Now I'll pull up the quote. He basically slices his hand with the shard blade such that he drops the honor blade, loses the ability to fly, and then is killed by the storm / the fall. And partially that was, I think, Kaladin has just sworn to protect people he hates. It feels odd for him to immediately kill Zeth, this person who is really a victim in the Stormlight Archive. And then 2, I think it was a little bit of, do I want to establish that you can stab somebody with a shard blade and then quite a while later heal them back to life? I think that's supposed to be inconsistent as well. So he now dies from mundane means by falling through the storm rather than shard blade to the spine.
So interesting. I don't think I knew that. I didn't know that at all. When did that happen? When did like that switch? Because
when is this blog? 2015. So quite a while back.
So yeah, well before my time.
Yeah. I don't remember if they fixed it in the audiobook or not. I'll tell you what happens when I listen this time around.
Okay. I've listened to the audiobooks. I don't remember. But I'm not that careful of a reader or listener that I don't know if I would have picked up on it.
Oh, sure, certainly. I think it was something I learned through Reddit, right? It's one of those things where people go, hey, this is the thing that's going to be, that happened or that got changed. And I mean, anytime an author changes their work explicitly, it gets talked about in retcons and what does this mean and all that fun stuff. Cool. Any final thoughts?
I really liked these chapters. This was a nice little. I was worried because you know how much I love chapter 10 or whatever it was, and so when I heard that because last week you said to me that there was a chapter coming up that you were worried about, like, and I was like, oh no, but I thought that these were really sweet. Yes. Yeah, I agree with Bag of Pudding. This is, like I said earlier, this was where I was like, and now I'm in. Like, I'm kind of, my brain has recalibrated and it understands that I'm reading Stormlight Archive.
Yes.
And I'm really excited. I think also, I think my prediction last week was that we were going to get more like chess setup pieces chapters. I still think we're in that stage. I don't think that we're going to head headlong into action yet. I think we're getting there, but so I think I'm really excited to see where I'm back on board. I was, like I said, chapter 10 was like freaked me out a little bit.
Sure.
But now I'm like, okay, I'm getting more and more excited. So yeah,
I feel the same way. I think that this is feeling that Sander Lanchy, we're interweaving characters. And it's just crazy to think that we're a couple hundred pages in and we're getting Sander Lanched already with 8 days to go. It's just like, ah.
I mean, this whole book's going to be a Sander Lanch, right? Like I'm actually savoring these little quiet moments, and I'm wondering now, like, is this the quiet before the storm? Both metaphorically, right? I mean, that's the exactly thing. Like, it does feel like we're about to start nonstop action to me. I love action, so I'm all here for it. I do hope we get, like I said, I'm really hoping we get a scene between Adolin and Dalinar. I want it so bad. Something. It could be like it could be them like yelling at each other. I would love that. But I hope we do get a scene between them. And I do hope we get, like, I hope, we can't have 800 more pages of just straight action. There's going to have to be some downtime, I hope. So, but it does feel like we're heading into the storm, so. Kaladin Zeth picnic.
Yeah, because he brought the snacks. He brought the...
I want some, like, Syl Nightblood bonding, Yeah,
I think that will be for a little while some good idyllic or at least calmer sections, right? They're not preparing for war. They're not preparing troops and all this huge geopolitical stuff. They're on a road trip. Like, you talk about things on a road trip. You have snacks. Do you think
there's going to be a lot of chapters of them traveling? I mean, how long is it going to take them to travel? They're like, it's not going to take them that long.
Well, I mean, you get to Shinovar, and then do you keep using Stormlight to fly? So not like to Shinovar, but to whatever they're doing in Shinovar, I guess, is more what I meant.
Yeah. Bag of Pudding, I think that you should not be that optimistic. Just considering what we know about Zeth, and the fact that he keeps using phrases like cleansing of Shinovar makes me think this is not going to be vacation with Kaladin and Zeth and Shinovar. But I appreciate your optimism.
I'm really hopeful that we'll get his flashbacks, and he'll share those flashbacks with Kaladin, and Kaladin will be like, let me help you. I know how to heal you now, and it'll be great. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, and I want to, exactly. Bag of Pudding, I was just going to say, I want to see them, like, kind of bonding. I loved the scene we got with Kaladin and Adolin, and I'm still hoping for more. I don't think it's likely to happen, but
it seems hard outside of like an epilogue, right? Because unless you have multiple epilogues at the end, they both have to survive. They both have to get back into the same place. Yeah, and there's just so many opportunities for that not to happen.
I know. I'm hoping that we do, though.
They promised. They promised they would share a drink together, and poor Pattern has to watch.
I know. Well, but at least then maybe we can get like some Zeth Kaladin bonding.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. Awesome. Well,
Yeah, I don't think that Kaladin's story is going to be him just chilling in Shinovar. I think it's a misdirect. I think that I think something big is coming.
I mean, it's a Stormlight book. 3 to 4 days is plenty of time to have plot relevant things happen in Shinovar, and I mean, we saw they flew from Shinovar. I mean, there's an Oath Gate in Shinovar, right? Like, there's no reason why 3 to 4 days into this they couldn't bop back over to Urithiru, complete with a fixed herald and a cleansed Shinovar.
Yikes. Yeah.
Oh, it's got lots of weird tones to it. I'm with you. I don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, like, I've talked about, I have a friend who's very worried because she thinks that, like, Kaladin is going to be a sideshow in this book. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think that, like, Kaladin being the main character in the first 4 books, I don't think we're going to suddenly sideline him here. So I do think we're going to have, I think something's coming.
Well, it's called Wind and Truth, and you've got Truthless, and you've got Kaladin Wind Blessed, Storm Blessed. I mean, yeah, he's central. He's pivotal. Yep. Bag of Pudding says, I'm hoping for cleanse to be a language barrier thing.
I am not so hopeful. He's got a chip on his shoulder. And he kind of deserves to have a chip on his shoulder. I think we're not going the genocide route. I think we're going, like, he's going to get rid of the higher-ups who did to his family.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to just... Well. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see, like, the Rift style. Burn everybody. So... But it is troubling language, is what I will say.
It very much is, particularly when you're on a functionally religious mission to a place. It's like, this is weird.
Yeah, it's bringing up, like, Crusades language.
Yep, that's the 4th ideal for the Skybreakers. Apparently, is go on a crusade. It's not a great vibe. I don't love it.
Yeah, not a great vibe. So, we'll see. We'll see. Right. But also, then he's got Kaladin there to balance him out. So.
Yeah, I mean, Kaladin's he's gonna protect even those he hates, so long as it's right.
Exactly.
But he'll also accept that sometimes he can't protect everybody. So.
And that sometimes he might have to sacrifice people. So.
Yeah, I actually saw somebody else come up independently on Reddit with. I've seen a lot more Lyran, or not even Lyran, but 5th ideal Kaladin theories popping around and.
Oh yeah.
I think it's got to lead to a revelation about the 5th ideal, whether it's whatever it is.
Yeah. Whatever it is, we shall see.
Whatever it is. And then I still really hope that this is where Brandon was writing his best fight scene ever, because he said better than White Spine Uncaged is a fight scene in this book. And I could just see the Stone Shamans with the Honor Blades fighting Kaladin and Szeth being just a crazy, insane fight.
I'll tell you why it's not going to happen for me. I don't love White Spine Uncaged because it's a cool fight scene. I love it because...
You're not wrong.
And look, there are a lot of cool fight scenes in the Stormlight Archive. I mean, if we're talking about fight scenes on a purely, like, cool level, I think Dalinar, Adel, and Kaladin fighting Szeth in Words of Radiance is super cool.
I just listened to that one. It's amazing.
So cool. So, the reason why we love White Spine Uncaged is because it's Kaladin and Adel working together.